If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now. It's just the two mics flicking through tomorrow's papers.
What are you doing in my shrubbery, you dirty little...
Nocturnal stirrings from the night garden of sporting news with Mike Ninky Nonk Graham and Mike Pinky Ponk Parry on Talk Sport. If you're up with a baby, you'll get it.
Look at the light!
Oh, the bridges! In my view, everybody in California is mad. No, they are. They're all nutters, aren't they? They go around towing bits of rock behind them on leads because they think that they give them more spiritual satisfaction than a dog.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham, and it's time to say a very, very good morning to Mr. Mike Porky Parry, the other half of the two mics. What went wrong, Mr. Parry?
Well, first of all, good morning. I hope you're given the opportunity to say that, Mike. You know, I do like to be polite in these sort of circumstances. But secondly, you are a complete and utter failure for supporting Gareth Southgate.
Well, you were supporting him yesterday.
No, I wasn't. I said I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because what I said about him after the first game, when England lost so badly, I think was part of the criticism that he came under, not just from me, but worldwide, from people who observed that game, and I thought he took note and brought a stronger team and a stronger method out in the second game.
And you said
so I gave him credit for that.
And you said yesterday that somehow your criticism of him had led to the more motivated players.
Yeah, listen, I can't individually claim that I motivate them. Of course I can't. What I'm saying is, lots of people listen to us. There's millions of people out there. And when I start droning on about Gareth Southgate not being good enough, that general impression spreads. It spreads like wildfire. It gets back to Gareth Southgate. He realises he's got to do something. But what he did last night was appalling. Absolutely appalling.
Well, tell me where you think he went wrong then.
Selection was wrong.
Right.
OK? Tactics were wrong. His ability to motivate the players and get the most out of them was hopeless. And do you know what I most object to? I most object afterwards to seeing Gareth Southgate looking into a TV camera when he's being interviewed, looking as though he's very cerebral, this frown across his brow, you know, this puzzlement in his eyes about, I can't quite understand how it could all go so badly wrong.
Well, after the campaign to get there in the first place was so successful and so many goals were scored and so much praise was heaped on him and the under-21 team, it seems ridiculous that more or less the same result has happened, albeit that they actually won a game this time, as the last time they went to a tournament.
Gareth Southgate is basically a con man, and he's managed to
I think that's very unfair.
He's managed to con the Football Association, his employers, into them thinking he's got some ability as a coach. He hasn't got any ability.
Well, this is what you said after the first game.
Absolutely.
And then you changed your tune for the second game.
No, I didn't.
And now you've gone back to the same tune for the first as the first game. That's ridiculous.
Right, let's look at the campaign overall.
Yeah.
We finished bottom of the group, and we went out last night to a team that beat us 3-1. But they were so poor, they've also gone out of the competition.
As well.
So that's not much of an endorsement.
But that's the point. But after having scored so many goals in the lead up to the tournament, clearly the problem is the tournament. Yeah. Nobody at England football seems to know how to play in tournaments.
No, I totally agree. And the other thing is, Gareth Southgate will be, quite happy tonight about the fact that he's finished bottom of the tournament and gone out of the competition. Do you know why?
He doesn't sound particularly upset.
Well, because he doesn't know how to sound. He's performing like a coach on a stage. He's acting the role of coach, but he hasn't actually got a clue how to be a coach because he hasn't got any ability as a coach.
How come he was doing so well before the tournament started?
He wasn't doing so well. He wasn't doing so well.
were doing brilliantly. That's what everybody said.
It wasn't a difficult qualifying competition at all. To get to the finals themselves, where only 8 teams qualify, was not difficult. But what I'm saying is, Mike, if you hear me out, is this. The reason he doesn't feel too bad tonight is because he knows the mentality of the FA is they don't sack losing managers. Because the FA's mentality is, no, we can't be seen to be buckling into public pressure and get rid of people just because they lose all the football matches that we ask them to play.
Well, it would be pretty ridiculous also to sack the under-21 manager having won a game at a tournament, having not sacked a manager of the senior squad when they didn't win a game.
Roy Hodgson should have been sacked. Now, my old friend Adrian Bevington used to be the man at the head of the FA.
Yes.
He's not there anymore, and you can see they're directionless. They are directionless, honestly, in a way that I haven't seen them for years and years and years.
In tournament football, they've been directionless for decades, haven't they?
No, they haven't at all. They've had good policies, and we've got to World Cups and got to quarter-finals, and that's an achievement in itself. That's not a problem. But what I'm saying is this. Gareth Southgate should have been given his cards last night at the end of that competition. He's humiliated our country. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, who's responsible overall for the image of this country in the world, right, the 5th biggest economy in the world, should have rung up the FA and said, I don't think it's time to put that guy Southgate on his bike. He clearly doesn't know what he's doing.
I don't think we want David Cameron involved. This is the guy who mixed up Aston Villa and West Ham.
I totally agree, you're probably right.
So I think that would just muddy the waters.
But he is the Prime Minister. I mean, Southgate clearly didn't know what he was doing at Middlesbrough. And after every game towards the end of the season, when his team got relegated, he appeared in front of a TV camera with this puzzled look on his face. My employers will have to evaluate my position, and if they decide that there is somebody else who can do the job better than... I mean, he's just completely hopeless at giving anybody confidence in what he does, because he doesn't know how to do it.
This is the guy who is, I think, being groomed to take over from Roy Hodgson.
No way in the world.
Why not?
Unless you want England to be an 8th-rate footballing nation, you wouldn't let Gareth Southgate polish the balls for training. You wouldn't.
Well, I don't understand how he can be so good just a few weeks ago, and then suddenly you go to the tournament and everything goes horribly wrong.
He wasn't so good. You get time in a qualifying campaign going over 2 years. You know that. You get the players together. And those players, incidentally, in between qualifying games, are motivated by their team bosses. They're motivated by their managers at their clubs, OK? So they come feeling good. When they're put on the pedestal of England player only for the next 10 days or 2 weeks, and the only guy you've got to worry about and try and please is Gareth Southgate, they are completely directionless.
But they did OK when they were playing for him before, that's my point.
No, they didn't do
Here's a question from somebody who's texted into 81089. Please ask Mr Parry what happened to his new superstar defender, Mr Stones. What a joke. He's fetched into the team to replace a good defender who helped to only concede 1 goal in 2 games, only for Porky's man to come on and help concede 3 goals in 1 game. What a defender.
I just told you that one of the worst problems of Southgate last night was his selection. John Stones should never have been selected to play in that game.
Why not?
Because he didn't play in the first 2. He's not match fit. He may still be suffering from concussion from a clash of heads in training.
But you told us all yesterday that this was the guy who was going to put the rock into the bedrock of what England needed at the back. He was the guy who was going to make sure that they won.
It was absolutely clear from watching that game last night, John Stones wasn't ready to be put into an England shirt, even at under 21 level last night, because he clearly wasn't assimilated with the nature of the business and what the team had to do. Right. He simply wasn't with it. He didn't know. And that's because Gareth Southgate had not kept him involved in what's going on when he was out of the first 2 games, and then suddenly plucked out of anonymity and told to get back in the team and become the bedrock of the defence. It couldn't possibly work.
But what I don't understand, right, is how, and you still haven't answered this question.
You don't understand a lot, by the way, Mike. You do not understand a lot.
Is how they played so well and scored so many goals and won so many games in qualifying.
Because they played poorer countries.
Yeah, but nevertheless, they were playing better football.
They were still playing
better football.
Yeah, well, I've just told you, when you go to a tournament and it's all down to Gareth Southgate and the players haven't got the motivatory instincts that come from playing club football every week, he's the only man who can motivate them. He's the only man who can say to them, pull this together, this is what we're going to do. He's failed drastically in his ability to do that. And the idea of letting him have another go... I mean, our performance in the last 3 under-21 tournaments, we did not qualify in 11, in 13 or in 15.
You didn't get through to the final stages.
The idea, didn't get out of our groups. The idea that this man, Southgate, who is an impersonator, he impersonates a football coach. He's not a football coach.
I don't think it's all down to him, though, as I said to you the other day. I think it's down to the players as well. I mean, Harry Kane was going out there because he wanted to. He chose to go out there. He was going to be the star of the whole tournament. England were going to win it. Yeah. Everybody was getting very excited. And suddenly, they're coming home again. So it's all over.
Southgate drifts all over the place, right? Manager at Middlesbrough, just weeks or months after retiring as a player. As usual, some owner of a club whose brain went to scrambled eggs when a big-name footballer comes along. Oh, Gareth Southgate, he was an England international defender. He must be a great manager. He turned out to be a very poor manager. What did Southgate do? Oh, I think I'll give up football management. I think I'll become a TV pundit with ITV and sit in a warm studio, and pontificate on the game.
And he was quite good at that as well, I thought.
No, he wasn't. Pontificate on the game that I'm very poor at coaching. It's a good job ITV take me on, because I won't get another job in coaching. Then England come along, ringing the bell. Hey, come back, Gareth.
Well, you know more about the inner workings of the FA than I do. I mean, why would they now not have some kind of massive inquest similar to the one they should have had after the World Cup debacle of last year?
Because they don't like to admit that they've got it so badly wrong themselves. If you sack a manager, like they did Steve McLaren, and that was forcefully done, that was positively done, that was responsibly done, because we didn't qualify for the European Championships, so they got rid of him minutes after the game, the Wally with the Brolly night, OK? And that should have happened last night. And because it didn't, I believe there's a lack of leadership in the FA.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. We want to hear from you on this one as well. 08717 22 33 We'll be examining exactly what went wrong and exactly why Gareth Southgate apparently is like chalk and cheese with Mr. Parry here. 1 minute he likes him, 1 minute he doesn't like him.
No, I didn't say that.
That seems to be
I
the
gave
problem.
him benefit of the doubt the other night, that's all. But, you know, you can only take that so far.
Well, we'll take loads of calls coming up. 08717 22 33 Why is it that England cannot seem to progress in any kind of tournament at all? This is TalkSport.
Come home, come home, come home.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes. Another miserable failure for England in a tournament. They went to the competition thinking that they'd had a pretty good run-up. They were in pretty good form. All the players were starting to click together. Gareth Southgate was being hailed as a great success. Suddenly now, he hasn't been a success, and England are out of yet another tournament. We want to take your calls on this. 08717 22 33 Is it possible to find anyone at the FA who actually knows how to play tournament football? Let's talk to Peter, who's up in Liverpool. Hi, Peter.
Yeah, all right, boys.
Yeah, hi.
Hello,
What would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm of the view of England should have a manager who gets them to the tournament, and then they appoint a manager who can win them the tournament.
Well, it's a bit technical, that, Pete. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but how would that work in terms of a manager just coming in and being in control of players for 3 games that he barely knows?
Right, well, you get a manager who's experienced. So you've just said earlier on that Gareth Southgate couldn't motivate the players in the tournament.
That's right.
And while they're qualifying for these games, the club managers are motivating them. So what you do is you say to Roy Hodgson, here, you're going to get them to the World Cup, or we're hiring Arsene Wenger or Rafa Benitez or Jose Mourinho to win us the tournament. Yeah. And I think that sort of appointment would motivate players to perform.
I quite like the idea.
Are you saying, Peter, that you would literally hire them just for that tournament alone?
Yeah. Why not?
I like the idea. Yeah, I'm not sure it works in practice, Pete, because could Jose Mourinho be released from Chelsea, say, for 4 weeks to go to South Africa in the summer and control the England team? But I think it's worth. Look, anything is worthy of consideration, considering how useless we are in tournament football.
Well, that's very possible. Peter, thanks very much indeed for your call. Let's talk to Bert, a Man United fan up in Manchester.
Yes.
Hi, Bert.
Good morning, fellas. You okay?
Yeah, very well.
Good,
what's your plan?
Well, I think we've got this unhealthy fixation with ball retention, and it's in the Premier League. It's England under 21s, the first team. It's being pushed for at St George's, and whilst it's important, when it becomes the primary objective, it stifles the attacking, the creative players. Yeah. They're scared to give the ball away. I'm a Manchester United fan, and watching Manchester United this year, we had better ball retention than City, Arsenal and Chelsea. We had a comparative defensive record with them all. We had one better than City and only a handful worse than others, and yet we finished 4th. Wayne Rooney, Van Persie, Falcao have just had their worst goal return, all 3 of them, in 10 years. Yeah. And so have Manchester United. And they're scared to give the ball away. And when you're scared to give the... Di Maria, everyone's saying Di Maria's had a bad season. The first 6 games, he was our best player. He was running at players, dribbling, and a lot of the time he gave the ball away. And Van Gaal got hold of him and stopped giving the ball away when there's someone 10 yards away. And it's stifling. There's 21 players in the opposition half watching Manchester United, and the ball goes down the right wing to Valencia. He sees a full-back, turns around, passes it back to the halfway line, he goes across.
Bert, listen, mate, sorry. The principle of what you're saying is absolutely right. My team, Everton, did the same. They had a lot of...
You did it to us. You did it to us. You beat us 3-0. We had all the ball, you beat us 3-0. Chelsea had one shot and beat us 1-0. We had all the ball.
All the clever little triangles and all that kind of stuff, but not a lot going there. But you're absolutely right. Do you remember years ago, you may not be old enough, there was a guy at the FA called Charlie Hughes, and he was head of coaching, and he was roundly condemned by every purist in the game for advocating a direct ball. Not a long ball, a direct ball. What's wrong with a direct ball?
Actually going in the right direction.
Going in the right direction to a man who's tall, a centre-forward. What's wrong? And he was roundly condemned. He's a long ball merchant and all that. But you're absolutely right, Bert. We're now obsessed. You have described the game tonight. The game tonight, last night, was simply going sideways all the time and not going forward.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? And Bert, I mean, I don't know if you watched the game last night, but I mean, England, same problem with the senior team. When they get anywhere near the penalty area, they don't seem to know what to do. They don't seem to have any kind of flair. Exactly. They don't seem to have anybody kind of moving in any kind of direction. And suddenly then go sideways again, they go backwards. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Harry Kane could have scored 2 or 3 tonight if we'd had some direct balls, because Harry Kane was up for it, and he was very active, and he was very aggressive, and he was full of energy and resilience and determination. But unfortunately, nobody's been told to give him the sort of balls that he needs to score goals. There's
also a lack of belief when we come up against the better teams. The under-21s have mirrored what the first team does.
Yes.
They breeze through the qualifying stage.
Yes.
And they get to the tournament and they freeze. They don't believe that they're good enough. And tonight they go a goal behind and they collapse. Yeah. And you can see that second goal coming. I
totally agree. Bert, thank you for your call, mate, and your contribution to the show.
Wasn't that meant to be the point, though, of coming in from a very successful kind of qualification process, so that the team was confident, the team felt that they could take anybody on? Yeah. That was what was being said before it all started.
Rubbish.
And then when they got out there, it just didn't happen.
I said at the start of the tournament, look at that team on paper. There's some good players there. I mean, there's all this row going on now about, well, why weren't better players there? Why wasn't Wilshere there? Why wasn't Barkley there? That doesn't matter. You went out with a squad which Gareth Southgate was very happy with. Yeah. There was no row going on between Southgate and Roy Hodgson about players being withheld or players only in senior squads. Gareth Southgate said he was very happy with the squad. He was in charge. He had the pool of players he wanted. There are no excuses. He's a hopeless coach, and I hope he's relieved of his job. And
but he won't be.
That's not because I'm vindictive towards Gareth Southgate. Gareth Southgate, is an all right sort of a bloke, as far as I know, and the few times I've met him and all that. But he puts on these air and graces of the deep-thinking coach. And in fact, that puzzled look on his face, about I can't understand why we got beaten tonight, what he's really thinking is, I wonder how long it's going to be before I'm found out to have absolutely no ability as a coach, because actually in my head I haven't got any ideas whatsoever.
But if I look like I'm
pensive, if I look as I'm pensive, people might think I'm cerebral.
But isn't it the case? You mean cerebral, by the way?
Cerebral.
Cerebral.
Just get on with it.
Cerebral. Isn't it the case, though? You were at the FA. At the FA, they look at football in a completely different way. They look at it. I mean, you heard what he said after the game. He said that actually this was their best performance in a tournament for a while. It was all to do with what went wrong in the 2 penalty areas, because that's where the goals get scored and that's where the goals don't get scored, which is all very obvious.
Yes.
But they'll analyse it in a way which has nothing to do with the way the fans analyse it. They'll analyse it as if to say, well, maybe we did a little bit better than we did last time because we actually won a game.
You made a very good point here, Mike. Now, as you know, I have studied clinical psychology in the past, so I'm going to examine some of the words he said, right?
Go on.
How about this? I don't think there are many things we got wrong tonight.
Right.
Well, are you blind, Gareth Southgate? Seriously, did you have, shutters over your eyes or something? Were you sitting with your back to the pitch if you don't think there are many things you got wrong?
Well, why don't you analyse each bit as it comes, right? So what do you think went wrong, or what do you think was wrong?
Wrong team selection.
Right.
John Stone shouldn't have been in. He clearly didn't fit into the team. They'd played 2 games already. He didn't fit in and feel competent and safe. Harry Kane was our best player, in my opinion, in terms of effort.
Harry Kane?
Yeah. Harry Kane, that's what I meant to say.
I know.
And he didn't get the service that was required.
But that's been the case throughout the whole tournament, all 3 games.
That's true. So we should have known by the 3rd game to change it and give Harry some service. I don't think there are many things we got wrong. You've got everything wrong. The second statement we'll look at. We'll look at our preparation.
Yeah.
Well, it's too late to look at preparation when the tournament's over and you've been booted out, having scored only 2 goals and won 1 game and finished bottom of the group and lost in your last game to a team that had also gone out because you're so bad. It's embarrassing.
And that's the point about the preparation. Shouldn't they be looking at what went wrong actually on the pitch instead of what went wrong before they got on the pitch?
And by the way, as we've got tomorrow morning's papers has just come in, this is another thing which always drives me bonkers. The headline, for instance, in the Daily Mail, the first one I've looked at, the future is bleak as Southgate's kids are a laughingstock while Italy romp to victory. Laughingstock, an England football team called a laughingstock.
But the Italians haven't qualified either, have they?
No,
so,
they haven't.
I wonder whether there's the same kind of post-mortem going on over there.
Yeah, but at least they finished with a fight. At least 2 minutes or 3 minutes from time, they were through because of the other game, where it was 1-0, and they would have gone through. At least they fought for their lives. We didn't fight for our lives at all. What about this statement from Mr. Southgate? There was just, in this hesitating way he delivers this information, there was just a 2-minute period which turned everything on its head. That was 2 minutes of inactivity, you fool, and 2 minutes of lack of concentration when he gave away 2 goals.
And when Mr. Stones was rather quite to blame there,
I totally agree. John Stones looked out of place tonight. He should not have played, and Gareth Southgate should have known that his mental preparation was flawed because he hadn't played the previous 2 games, OK? Reasons for not progressing are varied. It's not one thing. This is another statement from Mr. Southgate. Reasons for not progressing are varied. It's not one thing. I'll tell you what the biggest thing is, Mr. Southgate, your inability to be a competent coach of a team. Step down now, please. You know you can't do it. You know that
But you know that's unrealistic, don't you? You just know that's not going to happen.
Gareth Southgate knows that he is not able to coach a football team, whether it be a domestic one at Middlesbrough, where he was a failure, or whether it's England under-21s, where he is currently a failure. What's the point of going on? You're no good at what you're doing, Mr. Southgate, so why don't you step aside and let somebody else have a go? You played for England, you must have pride in the 3-line shirt, let somebody do it who can win games. And his last statement, key moments we had to make the right decisions and we didn't. Well, that's Bob.
And he's blaming the players then. And actually, I've got a tweet here from Zobol who says that. I understand Porky's point on Southgate, but the blame should be on the players for letting their coach down, which I think is right. And Bill says this, Cobbler's Porky, Germany, Sweden, Portugal and Denmark didn't have hard qualifying groups and they're in the last 4. So, I mean, you can't really say that England necessarily had a hard qualifying group. But you know as well as I do at the FA, they didn't have any conversation about getting rid of Roy Hodgson after that dismal performance in Brazil, and they will not have any conversation about getting rid of Gareth Southgate. So where is this great plan for England to win the World Cup in 2022? When's that going to happen?
I hope Greg Dyche steps in. Steps in when he's seen these headlines. Southgate's kids are a laughingstock as Italy romp to victory. And I hope Mr. Dyche, who is supposed to be a man of action, a man who ran the BBC once, a man who once ran commercial television, a man who's been successful in business, I hope he actually, shows some leadership in this. And instead of rowing with all the world's footballing powers, in which I think he did a very good job, by the way, and showed leadership, I hope he shows leadership here in a much more domestic scene and makes sure that Gareth Southgate never gets within 3 miles of an England coaching session again.
Well, coming up, I'm going to ask you who you think should replace him, because I don't think you'll have any idea about who that should be. But also...
That's not my job to do. I'm not a specialist in that role.
You'll have to think about something, because you'll have some time to do it.
Far too many barrack room lawyers who think they know the answer to the England problems. Leave it to the professionals, that's what I say.
So you don't know the answer to the England problems.
I could give some suggestions.
We're going to talk to a man who may have some answers. David Bardsley, former England youth international. He's going to tell us what he made of England's performance in this tournament and why England teams just can't seem to get through tournaments at all. This is Talk Sport.
It's pizza poor.
Look into the light.
So this is crunch time. The young Lions' destiny remains in their own hands. Oh, ball inside the penalty area, swept into the net quite brilliantly. It's Bellotti that's got the goal. It was a free kick taken over the top. He caught England unawares, and Bellotti stretched and volleys it past Butland. 25 minutes gone. England 0, Italy 1, and all of a sudden, England have lots to do. They find themselves behind in a game they simply cannot afford to lose. Christie will bring the ball forward now for Italy. England can't afford to concede a second here. Benassi with a shot, which deflects past Butland and in. 2 in 2 minutes. A nightmare for England. Benassi with the second goal. And England, from being in a position of power, now have so much to do to find the European Championship semi-finals.
Well, it's wonderful play by Italy, and it's a good example of how the Italians play. They scored a goal, they don't sit back and defend it, and that looks like it could be a killer blow for England.
Take a throw on the Italian right, launched in towards the near post. It's an overhead kick, and then the ultimate header goes into the net. Well, Butland dived for it. I thought he initially tipped it round the post. Maybe he should have been able to, but that will be that. Game, set, match to Italy. Tries to pull it back towards the edge of the box. Loftus-Cheek lets it run, and it's rifled into the net from distance by Nathan Redmond. That's a really good finish from Redmond, but it is no more than a consolation goal. And the bottom line is, whilst England end the game with their second goal of the tournament, ultimately they will end the tournament bottom of the lot and go home early.
It was live on Talk Sport, of course, last night, but it's a terribly familiar story. England come home from yet another international tournament, and they haven't made the latter stages of it. It's a problem for the senior squad. It's a problem for the under-21s as well. Mr. Parry, we're going to talk now to David Bardsley.
Let's do that.
Who played at under-21 level, of course, for England. Knows a bit about youth coaching as well. David, very good morning to you. Welcome.
How are you, sir? Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, good to talk to you again. It's another kind of disappointing result, a disappointing kind of performance in a tournament after quite a good run-up and a run-in in qualification for it. What is it with England teams, David, do you think, that they can't play in tournaments?
It's a difficult question, really, to answer. I think there are many points to talk about, especially, with the U21s, as far as, many of the players obviously have had incredibly difficult years in the Premier League this year. At least 6 of them have seen first-team action in the Premier League. And a lot of those guys, they're tired, they need a bit of a rest. And that's not to say that the other guys are not on the same page, but they're not playing at the same kind of level throughout the year. My understanding is, if there's a U21 league in England, then the players that represent the country really should be coming from the U21 league at professional club level, and not necessarily the guys that are playing in the Premier League, because, if we are picking the best U21 and 1 or 2 overage players, then you've got to say, well, why isn't Sterling there as well? So, sometimes you look at, Gareth Southgate, and you've got to ask questions, really, because if the players don't really play for him, there's not too much he can do. But in today's game, you could clearly see, for example, the 3 goals that they conceded. One would argue that young Jenkinson was at fault for possibly all 3 goals if you actually assess it as a coach. And that's not to say that everybody makes mistakes in the game, myself included. But sometimes there's a stage where going forward, there's no pressure on you defensively. There's an incredible amount of pressure on you to do well. And as you can see today, that the 3 errors that were made possibly could be put down to lack of cover. Or
well, David, listen. Sorry, can I just put a proposition to you here? You just talked about Gareth Southgate hadn't been able to motivate the players, so we've got to find somebody who can. But during the qualifying period in the years leading up to this competition, the players do have day-to-day inspiration from their club managers. If you're playing at Chelsea and Jose Mourinho's on your case every day, you're well motivated on a 24-hour basis. Trouble is, when you go away to a tournament, the one man you look up to motivate you and to give you that edge and to give you the direction and the understanding of what is expected of you is the England coach. It's the guy who's in charge of that group. It's an isolated bunch of people, the players and the coach. And it's most important then that the coach is inspirational to the players. Southgate clearly isn't. He couldn't motivate a kettle to boil because he'd forget to switch it on or something like that.
Yeah, but he was motivating them during the run-up into the tournament. Yeah, it's just in the tournament he wasn't doing it.
Yeah, but I've just explained, Mike, in the run-up to the tournament, they had their club managers to fall back on and their fellow teammates. They all play with very good players. But when they all get together and they're wandering around like sheep, they need a shepherd. And Gareth Southgate is not a shepherd.
Yeah, I agree with many of those.
Thank you.
Those points you make but then again, I could question that for many different people I've seen coach this year.
I totally agree.
And there are different methods to of coaching on the touchline nowadays. But even the top professional players in the world, if you don't get on their back, they're not going to play for you. So there has to be some kind of motivation from the touchline, as far as I'm concerned. Not spending the whole game shouting and going on at your players, but trying to really work with them on the touchline as well and show to them that you are part of what.
But Gareth Southgate doesn't, David. Gareth Southgate stands on the touchline looking puzzled and with a frown on his face and a kind of, that's strange, we've just conceded 3 goals. I wonder why that happened. Yeah. I better get my coaching manual out because I haven't got a clue what's going on. I wonder if anybody else has. I mean, it's appalling. Absolutely appalling.
But the point about all of this, David, was that we were supposed to be, England and the FA were supposed to be setting up a similar system to the Germans, having the under-21 team come through in 4 or 5 years' time, having played together, having won tournaments.
Doesn't work.
And, this doesn't seem to be going terribly well, does it?
Well, that was my point at the start here. I don't see how it is pure U21s because, if you're looking at having this U21 league in the Premier League, which people spend a hell of a lot of money to make work, I don't see any of those players from any of those clubs. Now, I can only comment on the teams that I've seen come over from England this year. You know, Everton were over at Dallas Cup when we were here. And listen, they've got exceptional players, U19, U20 level, that could have played in this tournament. So my point is, if you're talking about youth players coming through for the future, we already know that, you know, Harry can play, Jack Butland can play, you know, Stones can play, Jenkinson can play a bit. Why do they need to be here? Why aren't we playing players like, for example, young Furlong at QPR? He's spent most of the year at QPR with the U21s. He's played a couple of games. Surely this is the right tournament for him to go in and be tested. You look at the game today, playing against Italy. You know, they've probably got one or two real recognised household names playing. You know, Regani, Juventus, and Bazzagli, I think he's Bazzio, actually. And if you look at the rest of the group that they have, most of them come from the younger U21 groups that play in Italy. So they don't actually play a lot of first-team football week in, week out. And I'm sure there are a lot of players that are playing in the first team of Italy that suit the age criteria. But Italy didn't choose to bring those players. And I can't really speak for Sweden. I know Sweden went there really with one recognised player, obviously. You know, for Guidetti from Celtic, you know, the rest of the guys, it's like they're not really household names, yet they're holding, you know, there's no problem defending against Harry, no problem defending against Ings. You're talking about top-quality Premier League strikers that are struggling to play at that level, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, that is a problem. But does it look, from the, say, coaching point of view as well, David, that they are being taught too much to kind of just hold on to the ball and keep possession and not really being kind of coached to attack enough? Because that seems to be part of the problem in this tournament as well.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think, you know, the Italy plan most definitely today was to just clog out the midfield for the first part of the game. So they come out, they play a 4-5-1, you know, make it into a 4-5-2, a 3-5-2, 3 or 4 different formations within the half that pretty much got the goals that they required. And that was the end of the game. Made a couple of changes in the second half, 4-4-2. You know, and England are really still playing, you know, what looks like to me a 4-2-3-1 in many different ways, or a 4-4-2. And sometimes you look at the formation and you think, I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. But you can see with the other teams that the formations, they fit into place, the players are where they need to be on the cover, and it all looks to plan. So I'm not really sure. It looks a little bit like watching England's first team. Actually, you know,
I think that's
the problem, isn't it?
I mean, that's the worst news of all, really, isn't it?
This is like shakedown football. You know what I mean? You know, the first team failed completely in their attempts to make an impression on a tournament. Now the under-21s have failed in even worse fashion.
I don't know what the answer is. David, listen, thanks very much indeed. We're out of time. David Barsley there giving us the benefit of his views. Here's a few tweets for you. Andrew says this at the two mics. I just think we have not got the technical ability or the winning mentality of the other European nations. Same old story. And Ian says, Mr. Parry thinks England will end up as an 8th-rate nation. Well, that would be a promotion. Be honest, we are just rubbish. And G says, spot on about possession. The good players know when to keep it and when to play. And Steve says, England coaches are simply not good enough. More creativity and less straitjacket coaching needed. Overhaul the FA now. So it's not just about overhauling the what?
There are some much more interesting tweets that
What's
you've
wrong with
ignored.
those? What's wrong with those?
Well, I'll read you a few. Okay?
All right, go on then.
Spot on analysis from Mike Parry, says Dan. Okay.
Oh, have you got a special machine that shows which ones actually mention you and say that you've said something good?
Cav says Porky's on fire tonight. Every word he says is worth listening to. Is he back on the Red Bull? No, I'm not on the back of Red Bull. I don't drink Red Bull anymore.
Thank goodness for that.
Eric says Porky's got it all right. James says, spot on, Mr. Parry. You were absolutely right on the tactical blunder of not providing service for Harry Kane. I mean, it's just one after the other.
Well, if only you'd been saying this all the way. If only you'd been saying this all the way through the tournament. But
to
but sadly,
motivate.
Don't turn it into some kind of love fest for you.
Well,
this is all about trying to find out what went wrong.
Alex, who's even a Liverpool fan, so he could have something against me because I'm an Everton fan. He says goodness gracious, Porky, you're on form tonight. Couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I mean, this is a revelation.
Here's a good
revelation
one as well.
that I'm at one with the England international football situation, and that's according to our listeners.
That's very unusual. Well, let's finish up with one from Bill, who says, Porky has cracked the England problem. Time to scour the hills and dales for a decent shepherd.
Absolutely.
#SheepFC. Well, if that's the answer, then we're all in an awful lot of trouble. He's Mike Porky Parry. I'm Mike Graham. We are the two Mikes. Loads more coming up.
All right, stop. Collaborate and listen. I sit back with my brand new invention. Something grabs a hold.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes. There will be a podcast, of course, coming out a little bit later on this morning. We've got loads and loads of things to talk about. We've got Porky Vision coming up a little bit later on.
That's right.
Now, Mike, let me just read you this tweet at the two Mikes. Says, I think we should be bigging up the England girls, the only England team to get to the latter stage of a tournament for years.
Yeah,
and that
well
is,
done to them.
on the back page of the Sub, which I was going to tell you about earlier, but I couldn't get a word in edgewise, unfortunately. Over to you girls is what it says. But I guess what you're going to say is that it's not quite as important as the under-21s or the senior team getting to the latter stages of the tournaments they're in.
It's certainly important to the girls.
Yeah, of course.
They've
done very well.
They feel very very good about it, and they're doing the nation proud.
Well, maybe what we should do is think about bringing their coach over to the England under-21 setup and give him the job of trying to motivate them.
That is not the most ridiculous idea I've heard today.
It's
Why
not?
not? No. If he's getting them further on in a tournament, he knows how to make them feel good about themselves. Yeah, why not? I totally agree with you.
Why not?
I haven't got a problem with that at all.
What is the most ridiculous idea you've heard today?
The most ridiculous idea I've heard today, I'll tell you what that is.
Yeah.
If I drive up through Stockbroker Belt, and then I eventually come into South London. Now, do you remember a woman called Cynthia Payne?
Yes,
she
I
was
do.
the luncheon voucher. And do you remember the name of the street she lived in?
I don't remember the name of the street.
I pass it every night. And if you looked on your information pad tab, or whatever it's called...
My information pad tab, yes.
It's a very famous name of a street. And I've always been able to remember it because as a young reporter, I went down there, knocked on the door, and actually went into one of these luncheon voucher orgies.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Another orgy you went to?
Yeah. To let our audience know, what happened was, her name was Cynthia Payne. She was known as the luncheon voucher madam.
Yeah.
And to get around the laws of cohabitation, prostitution and lewd behaviour, she used to sell luncheon vouchers. But the luncheon vouchers had nothing to do with sandwiches or soup or crisps or anything like that. They were, in fact, £25 each.
And people would turn up with them and exchange them for whatever it was that they wanted to do.
They'd exchange them for sex.
Oh, OK.
And,
so did you have to go and get some luncheon vouchers from her, then?
Yes, I did, yeah. We did a dummy run type thing. And
how sordid.
When the police eventually raided her house, it was full of judges, policemen, politicians.
Right.
I mean, everybody used it. It was a very, very high-class brothel.
Right.
And it was, lewd and disgraceful
so what
behaviour.
was the name of the street that she was in, then?
The street was... I'm just trying to remember. But anyway, the reason for this story, point of this story is that street crosses over the main road, the A23, which comes up from...
Oh, here we go, Ambleside Avenue
Ambleside Avenue in Streatham. That's exactly the name of the street, OK?
OK.
Now, for some unknown reason, this week, as I've been coming in, there's always been a set of lights at Ambleside Avenue as it crosses the main road, and I'm coming up the main road.
Right.
And if you're at the front of the queue, as the car's idling, I look to my left, and there's the house. And I've always thought, brings back memories of when I was a young reporter on Daily Express.
Yeah.
The lights there have gone completely mad, and the queue to get to them is now a mile. They go green for exactly 3 seconds.
And they let one car go through.
One car goes through, and then they go red again for about 4 minutes or 5 minutes.
And this is deliberate policy, isn't it? That's what they're doing all over the city, actually.
Why are they doing this?
They're doing it because they want to discourage people from driving into work or driving into the town.
It is an outrage.
And they're trying to put people off driving as much as possible. So the longer it takes you, the happier they are, basically.
It is an outrage. So all you see for 5 minutes is cars whizzing left and right, going in front of you to the east and the west. But the north-south route is now, you just can't get through.
Right.
So you've got
Maybe you should think about coming in another way, though, because it seems to be riddled with problems.
You can't. It's one route. Now, I'll tell you what, there was once a chap who wanted to be the Mayor of London, and, he was already Mayor of London, and he wanted to retain his position as Mayor of London, but he wanted to introduce a congestion charge. It is alleged that he instructed his traffic commissioner to turn all the lights in the whole of London to red for 9/10 of the time and green for 1/10 of the time, so that then he could go out and take pictures all over London saying, look how congested it is.
Right.
But it was congested because nothing was moving, because he
I
fixed
think
the lights.
it's now sort of, considered to be common practice for any city to actually control the traffic lights in that way. There was that scandal in New Jersey, wasn't it, not last year?
That's right.
Where it was discovered that actually they were deliberately making traffic jams because they wanted to charge motorists more money for something or other.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure they do it in London. I'm sure they do it all over the place because that's what they like doing.
But what I'm saying about this is, it is clearly absolutely knackering to the economy.
Right.
If it takes me twice as long to get here now, I'm using twice as much fuel, I'm twice as inefficient when I get here because I'm frustrated and angry.
What must it be like when you're coming in, like in proper rush hour?
Absolutely.
Which is not when you're coming in.
Absolutely. And it's an outrage and a disgrace, and I think it should be against the law. To prohibit a motorist, on the Queen's Highway, which is what they're doing, which is run under the law of this land, and they are prohibiting you from moving forward, that is against the law. I think they should be reported to the police, and in fact...
Well, you could always try that, I suppose.
I hope somebody goes along with an axe and gets so frustrated, in their car, carries an axe in the car, gets so frustrated, get out and smash the lights.
You're not going to advocate somebody being violent towards some property of the council.
I'm not advocating anybody to indulge in criminal damage or misbehaviour, vandalism, anything like that. But what I'm saying is there's only a certain point to which you can push people. You have to understand that the people who make these decisions are local authority workers who do not live in the world of competition. They do not live in the world of reward and relied to effort.
Right, risk.
Or risk.
But they do, on the other hand, have a particular agenda, and they want you to stop driving into work. So
yes,
basically, they want you to come on the train, so they want to make it as difficult as possible for you to get there.
I don't understand. We had a general election recently, and the majority of people in this country voted for a government which is, you could call, conservative, Tory government. And a lot of the principles of conservatism, which people voted for, which allude to freedom, they allude to the freedom of expression, they allude to freedom of movement, they allude to not having to pay the state so much money in taxes and all that. None of that happens.
Well, that's the old-fashioned Conservative Party. Though. Nowadays, what they do is they say we are going to be the greenest government that has ever been in this country.
And charge you more for travelling.
So they're going to bring more congestion charging in. They're going to make you, you're going to discourage you from using your car.
It's unbelievable.
They're going to put more prices up in terms of parking. They're going to put more prices up in terms of
Do you know how much
petrol,
an average family now pays just to get on the aeroplane and go on holiday? Mum, dad and 2 kids. £62 extra in taxes alone, airport taxes.
I know, and this is one of the few countries that actually puts it on there.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, that was imposed by what used to be called a socialist government.
Yeah.
Because socialist governments are usually high-taxing governments.
Well, it was a Labour government anyway, wasn't it?
Labour, socialist, call it whatever you want. They're high-taxing. Well, one of the principles of conservatism, which the majority of this country voted for, was more freedom to spend their own money.
Yeah.
And, politicians said, we'll scrap that tax as soon as we get in. Have they scrapped it?
No,
they have not scrapped
because
it.
they need the money.
A lot of politicians said they'd scrap the congestion charge in major cities when they got in. Did they scrap it? No, they don't scrap it.
No, because they need the money as well.
They don't need it. They like having it. They like having loads of your money, politicians, so they can mess around with any little project they want. They're using all the money for the congestion charge at the moment to build a cycle superhighway.
Yes.
It's going to reduce the roads in most London areas to 1 lane for traffic.
But once again, that's all about making sure that fewer cars come into town and make it as difficult as possible for you to want to do that.
1 lane for traffic, 1 lane for cyclists, 1 lane for buses.
Yeah.
So buses is communal transport. Cyclists contribute nothing to the economy and are usually troublemakers to an extent.
Well, even though I've had my run-ins with various cyclists, that's a bit of a sweeping statement.
It's a sweeping statement. I'll withdraw it. They're not troublemakers. What I'm saying is they are very, very insistent on demanding that their presence is known on the streets of any city.
Yes.
Very demanding.
They
okay?
are.
Okay, I'll withdraw the
I still think that you should just find another way to come in, though, because, every single time you talk about... Well, because it would make more sense. If it's getting you more and more irritable every time you sit in a traffic jam or every time you have to come around roadworks or whatever they're doing, why don't you just find an alternative route?
These czars of transport, these collective czars of transport, are all people who are motivated by Karl Marxism. And
Karl Marxism?
Definitely.
Are you sure?
Absolutely certain. And do you know why? Because they think the idea that one individual can get into his own car, make up his own mind about which direction he wants to go in, and do it his own way, at his own expense, while 3 other seats in that car are not occupied, is an evil person. They believe that person to be an evil person.
Well, they don't think he's evil. They think he shouldn't be doing it.
And
they
therefore,
want to discourage
they drive him off the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the problem is, a lot of people don't like getting onto filthy, crowded trains that sometimes don't even turn up, and when they do turn up, you feel like a sardine when you get on them. Some people
and
like
they don't
to
run
actually,
all the time either.
They don't run all the time. Some people like to live like a civilised human being in their own sanitised car that has been beautifully cleaned inside and out, which is efficient, which gives you the ability to listen.
There's no warning lights coming on.
Exactly, gives you the ability to listen to radio. But no. The Karl Marxist czars of transport in most cities in this country demand that we do it their way, not our way. That is a denial of freedom, and that is non-conservatism.
Well,
and I don't understand why, if we vote for conservatism with a small c, i.e., give more freedom to the individual, we get less and less freedom all the time.
Well,
I just don't understand it.
It's not that you get less freedom, it just takes you longer to get from point A to point B, and that's why I'm saying, instead of being stubborn about it...
That's making you a captive of a transport system.
But instead of being, somebody who puts up with it, why don't you just find another... Well, there must be another way that you could come in. There has to be.
I would get rid of all bus lanes, because all I ever see in bus lanes are hundreds of buses with nobody on them all the time.
Well, not in rush hour.
Well, you see many more buses than there are people on them all the time, even in rush hour. Why on earth we suddenly decided that cyclists are more important than motorists, when motorists hold the economy up and cyclists don't? I just don't know what that's all about. Which person suddenly decided cyclists good, motorists bad? Who decided that?
Well, that's part of the ecological kind of framework of the new country in which we live.
I just don't understand it.
I think we can all live happily together, but the problem is nobody's worked out how that happens at the moment. Because the roads are too narrow, there's too many roadworks going on, and there's too many people with agendas who want to push one form of transport out of the way and bring in another one, instead of letting it all kind of coexist.
Cyclists used to be a minority, and in this country, for the last 50 years, we've decided all minorities are good people and all majorities are bad people. Therefore, we will support the minority cyclist. The problem is that the Karl Marxisms of the Transport Czar Institutes have supported...
That's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it is a bit of a mouthful, but I can speak it because I feel strongly about it. Have supported the minority cyclists to such an extent the minority cyclists are now... the minority cyclists are now majority. They've now got the majority. So now I think it's about time that the Karl Marxist czars of the transport system started treating motorists like a minority and started rebalancing...
Well, when they are a minority, maybe they will.
The transport plan, right?
Have you finished now?
Yes, I have finished, yes.
I've never heard such a rant about your own personal journey.
It all makes a lot of common sense.
Well, it doesn't really, because it's all about you, once again. But we will explore it.
It's about we. It's about we.
It is about we.
Collectively we.
It is.
60 million motorists in this country. How about that?
Who are not in a minority quite yet.
Talk Sport.
And it's in!
A diving header at the end of a 50-yard run.
From the root to the tip.
Talk Sport.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two mics, and we've got loads more to do. It's very disturbing, actually, Mr. Parry, I have to tell you, because lots of people are tweeting in saying that you're talking quite a lot of sense tonight, and they're wondering what on earth has happened to you. James says this, Mr. Parry's talking sense tonight. Does he fancy running for London Mayor?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Good idea.
I don't think you quite get the popular vote on that one.
Yeah, well, you never know. Look, I don't want to go all over the Southgate thing again, but I want, at every news break we get, play out that talk from Southgate. It is such drivel. It is such inane nonsense and rubbish from a defeated manager who simply hasn't got an answer. The more you play it out, perhaps it'll permeate into somebody's brain at the Football Authority HQ at Wembley that this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, but as we said before,
he hasn't got a clue.
If they weren't even going to consider losing Roy Hodgson after that appalling performance in Brazil with the senior team, there's no precedent for letting go of Gareth Southgate. They'll have to stick with him.
The only hope you can have is you can say, well, Southgate's lower profile than Roy Hodgson by dint of the fact that he's the under-21 manager, and they might think that, let's make a token sack and it'll be Southgate. Not that that would be unfair, that would be perfectly justified, but as you quite rightly say, it seems a bit unfair that Southgate should lose his job for such an inept performance at a competition, when Roy Hodgson keeps his job for a very inept performance at a more senior competition.
Exactly.
But you're right. Listen, I need to talk to you about why I think we could be entering a new ice age.
Why?
Which I'm very, very pleased about.
Well, I know it's not a particularly warm summer, but I mean, we're not getting any closer to freezing temperatures, are we?
Yeah, we are. Now, you see, because yesterday was very cold and it was wet and rainy and all that kind of stuff, and I thought it was quite mild yesterday. It was Monday. It was Monday I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Monday and Tuesday.
Well, it's Thursday now.
Tuesday. It's Thursday now, yeah.
Right,
so it's Monday and Tuesday.
Beginning of the week.
Okay. Beginning of the week, that's right, yeah.
All right, tell me.
I thought I must study my meteorological journals and find out what's going on. And I did find out that we could be entering a new ice age, OK? What's happening is the sun enters a cooler phase about this time in the cycle of the life of the sun and the planets, OK?
But we're not talking particularly imminently here, are we, I presume?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we're talking within the next year or two.
Really?
Yeah, 300 years ago, at about the same time of the year, the River Thames froze over. They used to have goose fairs on the River Thames. The ice was 2 feet thick.
I've seen the paintings.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's going to come again, one hopes. What's happening is that it's all to do with what they call the Little Ice Age effect, and it comes out every 300 years.
I thought we were in the midst of sort of a climate change which was generally warming everything up in northern Europe particularly.
Funny you should say that, because studying my meteorological journals, what I found out is that this current, the ice age we might be about to enter, the one that comes down the 300-year cycle, could be offset by global warming. So it'll be a very complicated ice age.
So it might not actually be an ice age at all?
Well, no, I think it will. I mean,
we didn't even have any snow in this part of the country anyway. No. I know people had snow in the north of England and in Scotland, but we had no snow at all this winter. Absolutely none.
300 years ago, the winters were so brutally cold, it led to social upheavals across northern Europe. People fled south to try and find warmth. So,
well, this is what we were being told, though. Up until relatively recently, we were being told that you'd be able to grow grapes up in the north of Scotland, and that certain parts of very hot countries now would be uninhabitable because they'd become so hot that people would absolutely have to just move.
Yeah.
And so this is completely against all the scientific research that I've ever read.
Now, what should be happening is temperatures should drop by at least 1 degree on average, which doesn't sound much, but it is, because it all goes down in ratio. And the cooling would, cause this ice age effect. However, because of global warming, which everybody agrees now exists, but the scientists can't agree on why it exists. There is a lobby of opinion to say, well, because there's more people on the world who are breathing air in and out, that's why global warming happens.
And there's more pollution and all that sort of thing.
More pollution, more people, more cows. A lot of cows create an awful lot of global warming, right? That will offset the ice age. So it could...
It seems a bit confused, this whole story, though. I mean, exactly what is going to happen in the next 2 years, then? Is it going to get colder? Is it going to get hotter? Is it going to get wetter? What are we going to be seeing?
The last grand solar minimum happened from 1645 to 1715. It was known as the Maunder Minimum. And this was when sunspots vanished from the sun's surface and led to some brutally cold winters across much of North America and Northern Europe, OK?
Yeah.
Conditions grew so grim that crops failed, food prices soared, riots broke out, famine was widespread. The 1690s were particularly dire times in Scotland, where famine and disease led to mass migration to North America. That could explain a lot about the Scottish people.
Well, I mean, the weather is pretty bad up there, it has to be said. It's very, very different from the way it is down here. And they've had some very bad winters in America. I mean, the last few years in eastern America in particular, they've had... Do you remember those pictures from Boston?
Yes.
Where people were walking to work and there was like 10 feet of snow?
Yes, of course I do,
Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah. But, I mean, sorry, I was not being rude to the people of Scotland. When you go through that sort of hardship...
Thank goodness for that.
No, of course not. When you go through that sort of hardship, you do condition yourself to having to put up with things which other people don't have to. So, look, I think it would be a really good thing, because also cold kills disease.
It does.
It would kill off all the rats. It might even kill off the cockroaches.
Well, if it was that cold, it might kill off quite a lot of people as well.
It would kill off vermin. Well, if it don't, it wouldn't kill off. It wouldn't kill off. What am I trying to say here? It wouldn't kill off people who were able to respond to cold. It might kill off those who couldn't.
Those who were not protected very well by it.
That's the one I'm looking for.
So what are the signs we're supposed to be looking for, then? What are the signs that your meteorological journals tell you that we should be looking out for?
Well, early morning frost and all that kind of stuff, you see. And the fact that this is going to be the coldest June on record is one indicator and one pointer of the fact we could be entering this ice age. So I just think you should know. I think you should know these things, OK?
Well, I should, but I'm pretty upset about the fact that it's the coldest June on record, actually, because we haven't actually had any real heat wave at all so far this summer. And I don't know where the summer is going to come from. We haven't had any heat wave.
Heat wave.
Heat wave, what?
Heat Wave was a group.
Heat Wave
They made a great song.
No, there was a song
No,
called Heat Wave.
Boogie Nights. Heat Wave.
Heat Wave was a band.
Heat Wave was a band.
Oh, was it? I thought Heat Wave was a song.
Boogie Nights, oh...
I do remember that song. Please don't sing it.
Boogie Nights...
Please don't sing it.
Anyway, look...
Anyway, I think that's a very confusing story. I think people will be quite alarmed by that.
I think it is quite confusing, because what it's saying is we are entering an ice age, but the ice age might not be as ice-agey as it was because of a lot of global warming.
So it won't be an ice age at all?
Well, yes, it will be. It will be. in certain parts of the globe, you see. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, look, I think you're absolutely right. We must move on.
We must move on. Let me read you this from Sean in Birmingham, who says, Mike and Porky, England were embarrassing. Gareth Southgate sitting there clueless. He is a clone of Hodgson. Ings and Kane were terrible. They had plenty of crosses but didn't attack the ball. Ings was particularly bad. Missed an easy chance. Too much tippy-tappy stuff instead of being direct. Looked to me like they just wanted to get out and hit the beach.
Yeah. What happens now when... Gareth Southgate made a big thing before the game, talking earlier today about... we often see Roy Hodgson at the under-18, under-19, under-20 and under-20. It's always great to get the senior coach around, to buoy the boys up. Well, he didn't do much buoying, did he?
No.
If he was around, and he didn't motivate them much.
Well, he struggles to motivate the other team that he's actually in charge
Exactly, yeah. So what happens now? So who at the FA will now say, look, Neville, I know that you've had a long tournament and all that. Could you come in the office tomorrow, please? We want to find out what exactly went wrong, and we'd like to hear, your version of events. So he goes in, he can't tell them what went wrong because he doesn't know. Yeah. So then do they call in Roy Hodgson and say, well, Roy's the senior coach, just stay there. We'll just go, Roy, can you come in? Now, you saw the games, obviously, as a senior coach. Could you tell Gareth where he got it wrong?
But how can he criticise Gareth because of what happened to him in Brazil?
I can't tell him, really. I got it wrong as well. I mean, so I just don't go. I just can't understand the England setup at the moment at all. I don't. It seems like we appoint losers, and when losers lose, we say we can't sack them for being losers, even though we appointed them, because we don't like to point out that they're losers and embarrass them by sacking them, and that would just alert the fans to the fact that we were completely incompetent in appointing them in the first place.
And we don't actually have an answer for an alternative plan.
We don't have any
answers.
answers.
Carry on as we are.
We don't have any answers.
But so, meanwhile, they spend loads of money. They build this St George's Park sort of place, which everybody talks about is wonderful and fantastic. They're going to get more coaches in. But, I don't really see any solutions being found at all.
I totally agree.
Anyway, we're not going to talk about football for the whole show because we've got lots of other things to talk about as well.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty miserable result, it has to be said.
It is.
But Porky Vision is coming up, so I hope you've got some decent tales to tell us about TV shows. If you want to give a taster of that later on, we can give a couple of clues as to what shows you might have been watching. We're going to talk about Formula 1.
I don't think so.
You don't want to do that? We're going to talk about Formula 1 coming up in this hour as well because of all this money changing hands and this possible new ownership from Qatar.
It's all kind of mad. And also, I think we should talk about the fact that Sir Lenny Henry...
Yes.
Right, who is the latest thespian knight, very well deserved because he's done incredible work for charity over the years. In his most recent play, which was in Chichester, there's a theatre in Chichester.
Chichester?
Yeah, Chichester, yeah.
Not Chichester?
Yeah, Chichester. It's called the Minerva.
Yeah.
He goes on stage and he actually dried.
Oh, what? He forgot his lines?
Not only did he forget his lines, apparently there's another word for that, when you just forget your lines.
Well, corpsing is supposedly when you just start laughing,
Corpsing, is it? Yeah. He dried, and what dried means is, not only do you forget your lines, you completely forget the plot of the play you're in, so you can't actually simulate anything and get into it. He walked off stage for a minute. The audience thought he wouldn't recover, and that it's not gonna... Then he came back, apologised, and resumed from where he left off and went on through the whole production. Now, the reason I mention this, Mike, is because we are going to be on stage in Salford Quays on Saturday night at the wonderful Lowry Theatre, and I don't want you to dry.
Well, I wouldn't do that because we don't have a script.
I've seen you on the brink of it.
No, the problem I have is trying to get a word in edgewise, as everybody knows.
That's not true.
Well, I think it is. Anyway.
Did you say edgewise? You said edgewise.
Edgewise?
Yeah, you just said getting a word in edgewise.
Yeah.
It's edgeways, I think.
I say edgewise.
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 This man's a fool. You're drying up already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not actually drying up. I'm trying to make you look into the light because it's that time. It is that time.
Okay.
We are the two mics. There's loads more to come.
Casting out my sweet life with abandonment and love.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on. Was that you on yet another trail? Is there no sort of stopping you at TalkSport? I mean, you seem to pop up all over the place.
Well, I
don't know. Yesterday morning. You're now on another breakfast show trail. Mispronouncing something, by the way.
How can I comment on that? By the way, I saw Mr. Brazil and young Ray after breakfast this morning.
Mr. Parler.
Yeah, we had a bit of a business meeting.
Okay.
And in the course of that meeting, right, just to develop the point about the red lights and all that.
Yeah.
Al and I, we were working in the studio near Tower Bridge, OK? Yeah. And after that, we had to get over to Langan's for a business lunch.
Of course.
Which is at Green Park Tube Station, right?
On the Jubilee.
So you're going from east to west across London.
Which is actually pretty quick normally.
Right. In a taxi, it took 1 hour.
You should have gone by tube. That's the point.
I wanted to go by tube, and I kept saying, Al, let's get... No. He said, it'll take another 5 minutes, it'll take another 10 minutes. Al is a bit sort of anti-tube, really, because he, prefers taxis. No problem at all. But... For instance, Fenchurch Street, which is a major artery out of the City of London,
a major what?
Closed. Major artery.
Oh, artery. I thought you said archery for a
No, I said artery.
Okay.
Artery. Out of the City of London towards the west of London, down Ludgate Hill and all that, completely closed. Completely closed.
Well, I was telling you this the other day.
Roadworks everywhere.
I was telling you this the other day, particularly at the weekends now. There are roadworks everywhere, and there are loads and loads of streets that are just closed off. But that's why you shouldn't even think about taking, during the day anyway,
I totally agree.
A cab to get across town.
I totally agree. Because
on the tube, it would have taken you about 15, 20 minutes.
It wouldn't have taken that, probably. On a normal day, it would only take that in a cab. You jump to a cab, you whip across town, down Ludgate Hill, up Fleet Street, and, off to the Strand, and you're there, virtually. It was impossible. I mean, London has come to a grinding halt. And I said to the guy, what's it all about? He said, it's a supercycle highway. Yeah. Boris Johnson is obsessed about the supercycle highway. He doesn't care how much inconvenience to motorists or traffic or anything. He cycles home at night 20 minutes and he thinks everybody else can do it.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, I think the point is, though, that loads and loads of people are being put off going around in cars, and so that's not necessarily a bad thing. But, there is an alternative way to get there.
What about commerce in the City of London?
You just go on the tube.
No, you can't take a lorry full of cakes on the tube if you're trying to stock a cake shop or a bread shop.
Yeah, that is true.
You cannot take 30 barrels of beer to a pub in the middle of the City of London by tube, unless you get 30 blokes all carrying barrels on their back going up and down escalators, which in effect would mean that tube would grind to a halt, wouldn't it?
It would.
And it's not a very efficient way of doing it in this day and age.
No, that's true.
But I tell you what, we will be back to horses and carts soon if Boris Flossier Johnson's transport policies continue at the mad rate they're going now.
Are you just going to bang on about the transport policy in London for the rest of the show?
Do you know the reason why we just played that song? I Wish I Was a Fisherman,
Blues,
which is a great song, by the way. It was found and developed by Keith Arthur, who for many, many years did a 2-hour show on a Saturday morning here called Fisherman's Blues.
Fisherman's Blues,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That was the connection with the song.
And Keith, exactly. And Keith, of course...
He didn't write the song, though, did he?
No, he didn't, but he actually discovered it, so to speak.
Well, it was by the Waterboys.
Oh, it was the Waterboys, yeah. What are they? Like an American group?
No, they're Irish.
Oh, Irish group. Oh, that's very good. Right, so great song, and Keith produced a great programme, and then he also does it on telly, on Sky, and he's put out a message today, I think, hasn't he? Saying that...
that he's not going to be doing any more.
He's not going to be doing it.
Series of tight lines on Sky.
But the reason we're talking about this is something, and I have to say, Sandy first spotted it this morning. Sandy, our newsreader.
Yeah, there's a piece in the Times about drone fishing.
Yeah. Now this to me is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Right. What happens is now this drone hovers over the. Sorry, what are you doing that for?
I'm just making a face at the producer.
You just rolled your eyes to me.
No, I didn't roll your eyes.
Why'd you do that?
Why are you feeling paranoid?
No, I'm not feeling paranoid. But if you're non-respecting me when I'm trying to address millions out there.
One, I wasn't rolling my eyes. Yeah. Two, I was making a face at him.
Oh, yeah? Well, and why are we making a face at him?
Because he said something to me.
Really?
Why are you asking me these questions?
Because I don't think I'm getting your full attention.
Yeah, you are getting my full attention.
You sure?
Yeah, all the time.
Right, OK. So this drone, right, it floats over the river.
Yeah.
And then it's the reverse of a submarine. A submarine puts a periscope up.
Yeah.
The drone puts a camera down.
Right.
It floats in the river. And then this magic camera can actually look around.
And you're sitting on the
degrees.
riverbank, presumably looking at a screen.
Yeah, you're sitting around looking at a screen with your little remote control in your hand, right? And you're turning the camera around, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh, there's a fish." So then what you do is you literally, like a darts player aiming for a double top, you whip back your rod. Okay.
Yeah.
And you pull the wire.
Yeah.
What's it called? The twine.
The fishing line.
The line.
Yeah.
The line. And then you hurl it in, and you drop your float. Is it? No, it's your hook.
Yeah. You drop your bait.
Your baited hook.
Yeah.
You drop your baited hook in just where the fish is.
Yeah.
And
have you ever been fishing?
Oh, years and years and years ago.
How did you get on?
I think I only had a net.
You had a net?
Yeah, I don't think I had a fishing rod. No, I don't think so. But anyway, can I just finish, please?
Anything?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I was about 6.
Oh, OK.
Right, and what happens is then the fish bites, and all of a sudden, everybody's jumping up and down. Well, the fish is jumping up and down. You're not jumping up and down.
I thought did they not drop something off the drone? Is that not the thing that they do as well?
No. It shows you where the fish are.
So the drone's only for the use of a camera then?
Yes, that's right, with the magic camera, right?
OK.
And then you've caught a fish. Now, I'm sorry, but this to me means that if there ever was any purpose to fishing, And I'm told that, the best sort of fishing is to go 24 hours sitting on a riverbank, contemplating life and catch nothing. Right. That's a great day's fishing.
Yeah, well, that's part of the whole
Jack Charlton used to say that. Jack Charlton said, I don't have to catch fish when I go fishing.
And also it's meant to be a bit of a challenge as well, isn't it? You're meant to think that you're in the right part of the river. You're meant to kind of read the runes and see what the flow of the river is like and see whether the fish are going to be looking to pop up every now and again.
Look, no disrespect to fishermen. There's millions of them in this country, but it's just never been for me. Yeah. And by the way, Keith Arthur used to
your explanation of how to cast your line into the water there was, I think, slightly bizarre.
No, it wasn't. That's what they do.
Yeah, but the way you described
hold it back over your head and then you throw it in.
Yeah, but it didn't sound like you'd ever done it, though.
Well, I haven't ever done it because I'm not a fisherman. No.
Have you never been on a boat and fished off a boat?
No, I haven't. No, I don't want to sit on a boat strapped in and try and catch a dolphin.
You've got a boat, haven't you? You've got a boat up in East Anglia.
I don't go fishing with it.
Why not?
Well, it's not a fishing boat. It's a boat to run around.
But it's not a pleasure cruising boat,
No,
is it?
it's a joy boat. You know
joy
what I mean?
boat?
Yeah, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
bit
like
of
a
fun.
speedboat.
Yeah, a bit of fun.
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. But anyway, look, what I was going to say is, and by the way, Keith used to make fishing sound incredibly interesting. You know, he's a great broadcaster and very knowledgeable, obviously, about his subject, and you're delighted in listening to him. But it's never been for me. So what I'm saying is, if there ever was a challenge in fishing, which was, as you quite rightly say, to use your knowledge of the river, your knowledge of the right bait, your knowledge of how long you want your rod to be, the knowledge of the sort of twine you're using, what colour do you want your float to be and all that, what time of night you should be out there in the river. If that was what the challenge was, that's all gone. Because now you're using a drone to find the fish.
Well, this is it.
So
and
what's the point?
I said that to Stan. It's a bit like those guys in America who developed that thing where they go to these lakes and they just throw a load of explosives into the lake.
And blow up the fish.
A load of fish up who would then sort of float to the surface and they put them all in a big sack and carry them home.
Outrageous.
It seems to be a ridiculous idea. I can't imagine that most sort of serious people who do get involved in fishing, which is still the biggest participation sport in the country and possibly, in many countries as well. I can't imagine why you would want to do it.
Do you know also...
But I thought when I read it that there was some device by which the bait could sort of be shot down from the drone into the water as well.
Well, what is the purpose of that?
Well, that would mean that then you would actually then sort of be able to follow with the camera where the bait goes and where the fish is, and then you cast the line in.
I wasn't aware of that. What I did become aware of, because I researched this afternoon after I first heard about it, I thought this is an outrage, is that it goes a lot further than just drones these days. In fact, they've got remote-controlled boats now that go out with cameras on the underneath of them.
Right. And what, you mean into the sea?
Into the sea. And see
that doesn't sound very safe.
See-through floors and all this kind of stuff.
Well, how far can you send a remote-controlled boat out into the sea?
Well, I don't know. I haven't got one. Mine's one that you sit on and drive. But remote-controlled bait boats, right, some the size of a small dinghy.
Yeah,
which
is about what you've got, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
The same size as yours.
Yeah, mine's a bit bigger than a dinghy. Which cost as much as £1,000, have also become common in recent years. The boats are not allowed for angling competitions, but there are places where you are at a disadvantage if you don't use one in spotting where the shoals of fish are. I mean, this is crazy. You know, technology is going to overtake every simple pleasure in life, isn't it?
It is, but I don't think many people are going to want to use that as a way to catch fish, because most of them will go out and actually enjoy the whole experience of sitting there, as you say, for hours and hours on end.
Do you know what I'm surprised hasn't happened yet?
Right.
Because I invest in a company that does pool and all this, and they've got
pool.
Pool and
like pool, like snooker.
Yeah, pool, snooker, and one-armed bandits and all this kind of stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a new game.
Doesn't surprise me.
There's new games developed that you can play all around the world, and it's called electronic darts. And what you're doing is you throw these darts at the board, but there's not a point on a board. It's a metal board, and the electronic dart sticks to it.
Yeah.
But you can play with somebody in Japan.
Why?
Well, because your board and your scoreboard next to you. As somebody's accepted your challenge in Japan or China,
right.
And so you say, OK, that's great, and you stand your 8 feet away and you throw your darts, and all your scores are registering up to your opponent in his social club in Japan.
In his company, have you?
Yeah.
And how's it going?
In China. Well, I mean, who knows? The returns are not expected imminently, you know what I mean? It's a long-term project. But you could play with somebody in America, Japan, Argentina, anywhere you like.
Right.
Do you think that's great?
No.
I think it's
that's
great.
ridiculous.
I think it's great.
Again, the whole point of playing darts is they're all in the same room.
Well, you don't have to be all in the same room. There's even cameras above the darts board, so you can see your opponent actually taking his shot, and he can see you. It's brilliant.
No, I don't like that.
I
don't
it's
like
brilliant.
the sound of that at all.
It's global darts.
Well, we're going to talk global Formula One in a moment.
I'm surprised nobody's ever cheated at darts yet, and actually put a homing device in the barrel of the dart.
No, I'm sure you would come up with something like that.
I'm telling you, that must be the next way to cheat at darts. You put a homing device in the barrel of the dart.
See the time, by the way.
And you break into the location where the darts competition is taking place overnight. Put some sort of a bug behind the darts board.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And then you put a homing device in the barrel of your dart. Use extra thick darts, and it would actually go straight to the double top all the time.
Only you would come up with something like that in your Life of Crime that we've previously heard about. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham. Loads more to come. We're going to talk Formula One coming up next.
On DAB, digital radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The pressure's on now.
Relieve the itch. Talk Sport.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two mics. There will be a podcast coming out, of course, a little bit later on this morning. Porky Vision coming up in the next hour, of course, which is Mr. Parry's TV review of the week with some great picks and things that you should watch, things perhaps that you shouldn't watch, and things that you may have watched a very long time ago. Now, Mike, you might remember the story we did yesterday about the Miami Dolphins owner looking to, with some Qatari money, buy up the Formula One business. And, of course, you were just saying the other day that Formula One's kind of hit this kind of, I don't know, wall, I suppose, plateaued out, perhaps, in terms of how exciting it is and what they can now do to make it more interesting, really.
The risk factor has been so removed from Formula One, it's not really of any interest anymore, because although it's a terrible thing to say, it was absolutely true that 25 years ago, a lot of people went to Formula One motor racing hoping that there'd be a crash, because the crash was the most spectacular part of the race.
Well, it was dangerous,
it's a car flying, wheels flying all over the place, you know, and all that kind of stuff, and nobody went there with a will to see anybody die or anything like that. But you know, it's now so sanitised, and it has become a procession. The best cars are so much better than the rest of the cars that they don't get challenged. And, for instance, the only real competition in this year's championship is between two drivers driving the same car.
Yeah, from the same team.
From the same team. And if one has a bad start, like Lewis Hamilton did, and can't get his clutch sorted, doesn't make the first corner, the race is over.
Yeah.
And you know, what competition is there after that for the next hour and 35 minutes?
Well, this is why it's interesting that this kind of deal, which is now in the offing,
I don't understand why anybody wants to buy it.
Might happen because, you know, it's supposedly going to push the sport more into China, maybe more into the United States. We're going to talk to a man who knows a lot about it. Todd McCandless, he's with Formula1blog.com. Todd, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. It's so great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. I mean, what do you think the chances are of, one, this deal happening, and two, if it does happen, Formula One being pushed as a major kind of motorsport in the United States of America, where it's still relatively, I suppose, secondary to NASCAR and all the rest of it?
Yeah, it's an interesting, you know, the timing on this news story is a little odd, but it would be very, very interesting to see if this actually happens. As you both rightfully mentioned, you know, the value, the stock, the reputation, the brand of Formula One right now is taking a drubbing. And, you know, the series is turning into a little bit of a damp squib. So to have an investment group very interested in the $7 to $8 billion range, not walking around money here, is very intriguing. Now, they are in the due diligence phase, and as you both know, due diligence is generally where you find out where the bodies are buried and all the gratuitous details. Not all bad. Some of it's good. You might end up finding out that Mike Parry's on payroll, and that's good news. But you never know. Will it increase the brand equity in the United States? You know, I don't know what the new investment group would do, but having the owner of the Miami Dolphins behind it, well, that certainly would be headline-grabbing here in the States.
Do you know what I think, Todd? I think the biggest indication of the fact that Formula One had its day and was now in decline was when Bernie Ecclestone sold 95% of it, because he wouldn't have done if he still thought it was going to increase in value every year.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mike, because ultimately what Formula One is missing is that iron fist, velvet glove of Max Mosley and Bernie Ecclestone. And when they made decisions, they just unilaterally made decisions that were best for the sport. Now we have this sort of democratic F1 strategy group. And, guys, the only thing they've agreed on so far this year is that the drivers can't change the color of their helmets.
Yeah, I know. It's quite ridiculous, isn't it? And also, the last race where Lewis Hamilton had problems with his clutch illustrated that the drivers these days have to be more sort of computer savvy than skilled as a pure racing driver in the mould of Fangio or Sterling Moss.
Yeah, it's one of the criticisms. Certainly, as Fernando Alonso said, you're more like an airline pilot these days than an actual race car driver.
That's right.
Some of the criticism, they're not driving flat out. They're lifting and coasting, saving fuel. Now, in all deference to Formula One, in the past, all three of us have grown up watching Formula One, and not every race is a barnstorming race, and we know that. And not every race is just riddled with passing. But the fact of the matter is that Formula One is suffering right now under this onerous regulations, and it is making it difficult. And, gentlemen, you're absolutely right. The idea of someone interested in buying that, well, that's big news.
And what about Stephen Ross? What sort of character is he, the owner of the Dolphins, and why has he decided to get investors from Qatar involved? Because, it's an unusual step, isn't it, for a US billionaire to go looking for investment from that part of the world?
It is a unique combination. He's big in real estate also, Mike, owns a lot of real estate. Very wealthy man. Certainly owns the Miami Dolphins, was involved, in the new building in New York at Freedom Plaza there. And so he's very invested. He's a very wise guy. He's, in his mid-70s, I guess. It is an interesting backing from Qatar in that Qatar looks at this as a commodity. It's a branding. It's a legitimacy. This is the reason a lot of the Asia-Pac countries are government funding a Formula One race. They would love to have a Formula One race in Qatar. Now, the question is, how will the Bahraini Grand Prix feel about that?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting too. But we'll see. It seems to be quite a long way off at the moment. Todd, thanks very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Todd McCandless there from Formula1blog.com. Because sometimes when the Americans get involved with overseas investors, particularly in the United States now, with some of these new rules about where money comes from and all of that, with the whole FIFA investigation thing, I mean, the Qataris are going to have to undergo all sorts of stringent kind of pressure tests to see whether they're the right kind of investors to put their money into the United States. So
definitely, totally agree with you.
I don't know whether it's going to change anything, but I get the sense that if it works, that somehow it will get moved away from Europe, as I said to you the other day.
Well, it'll go where the money is. Yeah. And the old money in Europe is running out, and the new money is all over the world, but it's not in Europe. I totally agree with you. Yeah. Listen, I had a very busy day today. I've told you already about the horrendous taxi journey across town, right? But before that, I had to get back into town. Yeah. Because when I left here this morning, I wanted to get my car back to...
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I don't quite know how you do it. I mean, you finished here at 4. Yeah. You were then back on the breakfast show
that's right.
at, 7:30? 7. 7. And then you're out of London and back into London for 10 o'clock.
Yes.
I don't know how you manage it. Well... For somebody who has only one-third of his heart working...
Well, that's true.
It seems extraordinary.
It's true. Well, I just have to discipline myself and not, be excessive in other parts of my life. You know what excess is all about, Mike, because you indulge in it quite a lot.
There have been times when that has happened, yeah.
I don't. But anyway, look, the point of my story is this.
What is the point of the story?
To get back into town, I basically needed to get home because I had to sort a couple of things out with, business affairs and that kind of stuff and just see one or two people and then get out again. So I decided to come back on the train. Yeah. It is a lot easier than coming back in your car. And the train was full of these girls who, I'm not joking, looked like they were going off to Girls' Guide camp circa 1955.
Were they in Girl Guide uniforms, you mean?
No. Wellies, shorts, huge rucksacks, pans hanging off the rucksacks.
Oh, this
literally.
is the Glastonbury thing
I was about to say, is it time now for people to get to Glastonbury?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because Glastonbury gets underway this weekend, so people are already heading down there.
Well, believe me, they must have been going there. Otherwise, they were going to a fancy dress party. But I didn't realise that, this sort of typical attire for somebody in Glastonbury, wellies, shorts, rucksack, was actually pro forma for everybody who goes.
Well, it has to be, because it's going to be very wet this weekend, right? And it's going to be very muddy, and you certainly need wellies, and you certainly need a rucksack to carry your sleeping bag and your tent and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And that's where most people will, they're not going to the glamorous bit of it. They're not going to be put up in a hotel. Yes. They're all going to be just, camping out on the land.
Well, it's not for me. It's not for me. But look, if it takes people's minds off the real world, which is a wicked and evil place, which can frustrate you terribly, can reduce you to tears, can make you despair and leave you feeling, flailed by life.
About yourself?
No, I'm not talking about myself. No, I'm talking about...
a pessimist.
No, I'm talking about, the people who find life too tough. Then if they want to go away to Glastonbury for a few days, lose themselves in the mud, the blood and the beer, who am I to argue?
The mud, the blood and the beer. There's a good slogan for it.
Yeah.
We'll talk some more about the music festival that is Glastonbury, of course.
Yes.
And we've got Porky Vision to do as well. He's Mike Parry, I'm Mike Graham.
Yes.
We are the two Mikes. This is TalkSport.
Hey! Kamata, kaora, kamata, kaora. Tanugahi, parakawawanga, taruga, tarama. Hey!
Might have to revive the old hacker that you did, actually, because it's a Rugby World Cup coming up soon.
You're absolutely right, it is, yeah. Oh, by the way, I want to talk to you about that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
What about the Rugby World Cup?
I want to talk to you about the Rugby World Cup, okay? Because I am, studying that because I feel there's a chance, I don't want to give any secrets, Mike, and I don't want to cause any rivalries or jealousies amongst us here at TalkSport, but there is, of course, a chance that I will be appointed the correspondent for the Rugby World Cup.
As you indeed were in France,
In France in 2007, I was the TalkSport Rugby correspondent. Now, so I start studying it, what are all the big shakers and movers saying, and I was utterly appalled to find out that Stuart Lancaster, who I have to say does not altogether inspire me greatly as a leader of men.
He's not a Gareth Southgate for you, though, is he?
No, he's not a Gareth Southgate, but I find that he's far too easygoing for a man who I think should have steely resistance in place of a rather easygoing nature. You know what I mean? I'm just like that. I think leaders should be like tougher guys. But what has absolutely amazed me is that despite the fact that one of his star players, or one of his maybe star players, could be star players, Danny Cipriani, is in the middle of waiting to hear from the police about an allegation which could suggest he may have been involved in a drink driving incident, right? And that's not resolved yet. We're still waiting to find out what's going there. And despite the fact that he has another player on his books who was involved in a terrible incident involving, which was sourced with excessive drinking and all that kind of stuff. That's Manu Tuilagi, right? Yeah, you know who he is.
Yeah, very interesting pronunciation.
Yeah. Despite that, Stuart Lancaster has said he's not going to impose any sort of curfew or booze ban on his players during the competition. There'll be no nighttime curfews about when they're expected back into training camp, and there'll be no alcohol bans.
That seems a bit unwise, doesn't it?
That is utter madness, right?
And because you and I have talked a lot about footballers who behave badly off the pitch, and we give them quite a hard time. And rugby players are always brought up into that kind of debate because people say, well, it's not just footballers. Rugby players get involved in this kind of stuff as well, and they don't get given quite as hard of a time.
No, they don't. But what amazes me, Mike, is that most of the time people say, rugby players are brighter and more intelligent human beings than footballers, so they don't need that sort of iron discipline. They know how to behave themselves.
Well, they could have done with it in
Australia.
It was for the last World Cup.
In New Zealand. That's, I mean, in my opinion, rugby players are much worse behaved than footballers are. I mean, rugby players go around jumping off ferries. And
that's what Tuilagi did, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, all sorts of outrageous sort of behaviour, as you quite rightly say. On the pitch, they bite each other. They do terrible things to each other on the pitch, and they're far worse behaved than footballers. And yet we all regard them as gentlemen.
Well, they're not quite as much in the public eye, are they, as footballers are? And that's why probably they get away with it. It does seem an unusual thing for Lancaster to do. But he must have a reason for doing it, though. And you're talking about a couple of players rather than the entire squad.
But he goes on here. He says we haven't talked about specific bans in any shape or form. He's saying this proudly. Yeah. Proudly. Oh, don't worry. I'm not hard enough to impose any sort of curfews or bans on my players.
But he wouldn't be the first manager, would he, who has decided that he's going to make the players kind of look after themselves and treat them like grown-ups.
Well, look how it worked, as you quite rightly say, in New Zealand.
Well, exactly. It doesn't work so well.
I mean, even Mike Tyndall, related to the royal family, got involved in situations which I'm sure he found rather unfortunate. Yeah. And, he's royalty. It's amazing.
Well, he's also on TalkSport as well,
of course he is, yeah, absolutely.
After all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I'll tell you the other story that I thought was strange today from the sporting world was this one about the Irish playing a friendly against Argentina.
That's an amazing story.
And the Irish now having to kind of deny that there was an instruction put out that Lionel Messi was to be sort of left alone and not tackled particularly hard.
That's an amazing story. Yeah. And if it's true, and we don't know if it is...
Yeah. They're denying it, aren't they?
Are they, or are they saying they're inquiring into it? I'm not sure. Are they denying it absolutely? Irish deny they took bribe to go easy on Messi. Yeah, Mud sticks. It's not nice when these claims are made against us. However, I would say if it was true and that Irish players were paid to leave Messi alone, the greatest footballer in the world. I'm not terribly offended by that. I think that's a fair enough deal.
Yeah, but I mean, again, looking into all of this FIFA sort of scenario that we've been seeing over the last month or so, you know, you can't just solve every problem. I know that this is what you quite often do. You don't just solve problems by paying money out to people, right?
Well, money talks. Money makes the world go round.
I mean, if, for example, money was paid, like we found out about the payment that was made to the Irish after that sort of French World Cup debacle and French...
I didn't see a lot wrong with that.
Well, I mean, I don't think they can be making payments that weren't then declared, though.
It was a loan to the Irish footballers, the Republic of Ireland Football Association.
But until that moment, until we were told about it, nobody actually knew it was a loan that had been paid out.
The whole idea of FIFA is to distribute funds around the world from wealthy footballing nations and wealthy footballing institutions.
But hopefully in a transparent way, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't used to line people's pockets in Ireland. It went on building new changing rooms and things like that. I was fine with that. And I'd be fine with this. Let's remind everybody, the game in question was a celebratory friendly, Republic of Ireland versus Argentina to commemorate the opening of their new Aviva Stadium. Right. It was on August the 11th, 2010. Right. And I'll tell you something.
And some people have been saying that this was also part of the kind of, hush money scenario to the Irish FA from FIFA. They said, well, have a nice friendly that you can raise some money with as well.
Well, I don't see a problem with that. You know, people got a great game of football out of it. Lionel Messi turned up. And I tell you something, if Lionel Messi turns up for a game like that, the insurance policy on making sure he doesn't get injured is huge. So why not just pay the other players to say, please don't cripple him or break his...
Well, I mean, you can issue a kind of a plea that doesn't happen, but you can't start paying people for things like that, because then surely it kind of cheapens the sport. It makes it not a true actual contest for the people who have paid money to go and see it.
Yeah, it says here, now who's this chap called Grondona? Giulio Grondona, the former Argentine FA president, a senior FIFA vice president, suggested to Blatter that Argentina play in Dublin as part of the reconciliation pact between FIFA and the Irish when the Irish felt they were turfed out of the competition because of the Thierry Henry handball. Okay,
yes, exactly.
So it is alleged. Now it says Barcelona were said to be reluctant to release Messi, so they had to entice him.
It
makes absolute sense. From their pre-season tour of Asia to play in the game. And Argentina could not afford the £3 million insurance premium to cover their star player against the threat of injury.
Yeah, which also makes sense.
Of course it makes sense. So it is alleged that Grondona, the Argentinian chap, who died last year, by the way, aged 82, sadly, but has since been implicated in the FIFA corruption scandal, thought it would be cheaper to pay the Irish players $10,000 each not to hit Messi. I think that's quite a fair arrangement.
But no, I think that stinks. I think it sounds absolutely awful. Because if that is the kind of thing that FIFA senior executives were getting involved in terms of trying to solve problems and just kind of throwing money at things, it makes the game a nonsense, surely.
I mean, look, the Irish are denying this, so we have to accept it didn't happen. But if it had happened, I'd have said it was OK, because then the Irish people saw the world's greatest footballer, Lionel Messi, playing in their presence at the opening of their new stadium.
Right.
And this guy made it work. Grondona made it work. And he made it work if he played every player on the pitch for $110,000 instead of $3 million US dollars for the insurance policy.
But this is why club managers now absolutely detest all these friendly games that get organised, because they're worried actually that their star players will go off and play in a friendly and get injured.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Because the insurance now is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, one of the players that Messi was playing against was a guy called Richard Dunn. Now, Richard Dunn is a lump.
Yes, I remember
He's a
Richard
lump.
Dunn, yeah.
He was at Everton for years, and he was just a bit too heavy.
Yeah.
And he went off to Manchester City, where actually he became a better player.
Yeah.
And then he had quite a distinguished Premiership career. And he was not over dirty or anything like that, but a big, heavy man. And I think to give him $10,000 to say, look, don't clatter into Lionel Messi if you can help it, is a good investment.
But I think the problem is that nobody knew about it, and if it was done, and if it was money that was passed to individuals in the Irish team, then surely they should have come out and said it at the time. That's the problem. I mean, that's the whole problem with FIFA, is it's not transparent. Nobody knows even what people are getting paid there. Nobody knows where the money goes. Nobody knows who disperses it. It's not wrong.
Yes, well, I mean, what I'm saying is arrangements like this, behind closed doors, to me, make the world go round. They just do, I'm afraid. I don't regard that as corruption. Here the FA...
what do you regard as corruption, then?
Well, what I regard as corruption is somebody taking money they're not entitled to.
Right.
But those Irish players were entitled to take that money because it was offered as part of the contractual deal to make that game happen. OK?
Yeah, OK.
I don't regard that as corruption.
Then, what you're asking professional footballers to do, professional athletes to do, is to not actually play as they would normally play for a fee.
But it was
and
a friendly.
That's wrong.
But it was a friendly.
Well, yeah, but it's still wrong,
there were no points involved in it. It was a celebration game to open a football stadium. It wasn't a massive, World Cup final. If it had been a World Cup final, I would agree with you, but it wasn't.
Couldn't they have just said to them, don't play particularly heavily, don't go in heavily on anybody at all, because it's a friendly and it's an exhibition game, so don't clatter anyone without having to actually pay them money.
Well, you give them an incentive, you make absolutely sure they don't clatter someone. Let's make it absolutely clear and fair here by quoting FAI Chief Executive, that's Football Association of Ireland, John Delaney, says he struck what he described as a very good and legitimate deal with Sepp Blatter over the issue of Henry's handball, which was missed by Swedish referee Martin Hansen and his assistants when France won 2-1 on aggregate in Paris that time, OK?
Yeah, and they went to South Africa as a result, right?
Yeah, FIFA claimed that the payment was a loan towards the building of the Aviva Stadium, which was later written off by prior agreement when Ireland failed to qualify for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil.
So it was never repaid, so it wasn't actually a loan, was it?
Well, it was a grant. It was a grant towards a football stadium. That's not corruption, in my view. That's what FIFA exists for, to spread the word and the deed of football around the globe. So I don't think the Irish have got
more about the motivation behind the money that was actually changing hands? And it's not in terms of, it wasn't a merit amount of money they gave them. They gave them the money in order that they would walk away from any kind of legal problem.
You see, I think you're too prissy about this. I think secretly you think that was probably quite a good way to solve the problem and make the game happen. But you think you're impressing our millions of listeners by, being the paragon of virtue. I can't have this. It wasn't a legitimate payment. Who are they cheating? Who are they cheating?
Well, it's not so much that they were cheating.
They weren't cheating the fans because the fans got Lionel Messi.
Yeah, but it's
they wouldn't have got Lionel Messi.
But it's the fact that the fans didn't know about this, and the fact that it's not transparent is my problem. I don't mind FIFA making payments to all sorts of people as long as they tell everyone and that's what's going on. That's the bit that I don't get, because what I don't want is people, doing sort of backhanded deals without any member of the public actually knowing what's going on. That's why FIFA is going to have to be completely restructured and changed, because it can't carry on like that.
Just getting back to Stuart Lancaster, the rugby boss, I found a quote from him here. The players know their responsibilities and the consequence of poor behaviour and poor decisions. I will be very disappointed if we have to deal with any more of these things.
Yes.
What a weak and useless statement that is.
He's taking a chance, isn't he, basically?
He is taking a chance, against men who in the past have let him down.
Yeah, well,
so I wouldn't take that chance, mate. I'd be rather more cynical.
He's saying that hopefully, if you treat people like grown-ups, they will behave like grown-ups. So
but
we'll
they
find
don't.
out whether indeed he will be right about that.
They've proved in the past they don't. If you leap off a ferry, you're not very grown up. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, that's true. But, I mean, here's a text from Keith, who's texted into 1889. Says, Mr. Parry, you're clearly not up to date with current issues in rugby. Right. Stuart Lancaster is a principled, steely manager of men. If players abuse his trust, they are gone. Simple, says Keith. But that's not necessarily what you were saying.
Why doesn't he say to them, right, fellas, we've got a chance of winning the World Cup on home territory, so I'm going to ask you to stay off the booze for 3 weeks, right? I'm going to ask you to get in at 10 o'clock each night if you've been out and behave yourselves, because that way, with iron discipline, we've got a chance of winning something that at the moment is probably beyond us.
But isn't it also true, if you give people a curfew, then it gives them something to kind of rebel against? And if you don't give them a curfew, then they might behave a bit more sensibly.
What a stupid theory. Where did you get that from? Where did you get that mad theory from?
If you treat people who are
your crazy old father tell you that?
No, he did not. If you treat people who are grown up as grown-ups, they'll behave properly. If you treat them as kids, they might actually rebel against it.
That's nonsensical to the nth degree. If these are intelligent human beings, they shouldn't need to be told. Of course they shouldn't. But we know from past experience, not everybody is as straight-thinking, as straightforward, as reliable as, well, me.
As you. Yeah. The man who has twisted every single word that he's uttered, I think, on the Gareth Southgate issue alone. Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the Two Mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on, about 6 hours from now. A couple of tweets to read out and some text as well. Rob from Peterborough says this: Porky's ramblings are indeed far less nonsensical than has become the norm. So I'm wondering if, like John Stones, he might be mildly concussed. I think that's a compliment.
What did you say? Far less nonsensical.
Yes.
So they're getting more sensible.
More sensible.
Oh, OK. Well,
a lot of people are saying you're making more sense tonight, but I'm not sure if that's going to continue into the third hour of the show.
I think it probably will.
And here's one from somebody who wants to tell you about Glastonbury, which he says is a festival of joy, positivity, fraternity, and youthful exuberance. None of which Mr. Parry would understand, so his comments are irrelevant.
OK. I think my comments are very relevant because I was only commenting on seeing the young ladies going off to Glastonbury today, and I hope they have a great time. It's not for me, but then again, neither is fishing. Now, crazy old Liz, right, seems to have some sort of a obsession about high-heeled shoes this evening. He keeps sending me pictures of them with red soles, like pearly ones with red soles. I don't know why.
Those Louboutin shoes.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Which have got red soles.
And I have to say, thanks, Liz, but, not my style, I'm afraid. So, just keep trying
There's
with the
a big row actually going on in the shoe world because...
it's all about damaging ladies' feet, isn't it?
Well, no, there's the woman who kind of created Jimmy Choo's shoes and then sold them off to another company.
Now, her name is...
Melon.
Melon.
Tamara Mellon.
Tamara Mellon.
Yeah, she's trying to start up her own company, and apparently they're trying to prevent her from doing something or other that they want to continue to do. It's one of those very complicated fashion stories. There's a massive lawsuit going on.
It's interesting. I thought one of the great trade disputes of all time was Riverdance. Because Michael Flatley, who was, and Riverdance started as a 10-minute interlude in the Eurovision Song Contest, didn't it?
Yeah, I think
it literally did.
He was on the final of the X Factor, wasn't he? Because he came out and actually danced with everybody and said, I don't really do this very much anymore.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know. But anyway, the point of the story is, he became the lead dancer, and I mean, I thought he was brilliant, but he had a massive ego. And I don't think he could have done what he did in life without that massive ego. He thought a lot of himself.
Some people need to have a massive ego.
Yeah, now he danced with a lady
You've
called...
got a massive ego, haven't you?
No, I haven't, no.
Would you say you don't have a massive ego?
I have...
How sizable would you say your ego is then?
I have a realistic perspective of my position within life and the world, which I accord to.
And what is your position then?
And I am not prepared to compromise that very, very distinctive... identity.
I see.
Which I protect.
Well, what would you say is your position, though? Can you define it?
I mean,
in terms of like the strata of society.
Well,
how you see it?
I would say that I don't want to sound sort of big-headed or conceited,
egotistical,
but I would say that I am elevated above. Probably 95% of the people in the world.
So you're not necessarily part of the 1%, but you're part of the 5%?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah, I think so,
okay.
yeah.
And what would you say I was then?
Not bad, but a bit below me.
Bit below you?
Yeah.
I thought you might say
that. No, but I mean, I'm just being honest. Yeah, I mean, there's no good in me being falsely modest, is there?
There isn't. It wouldn't be you.
It's no good in me saying, well, I think I'm on the same level as a chap who, for instance, is a really good sort, but brushes streets in Doncaster.
A decent person.
Yeah, a really good guy, and it's a hard job.
He would be above you then?
Sorry?
He would be above you?
No, I'd be above him.
Oh, what? Even though he's nicer than you?
It doesn't matter about niceness, it matters about your position in life,
I see.
and how much people respect you. I notice, for instance, even though I admit I'm no great oil painting, whenever I go into a pub to ask for a drink, if I go into a shop to ask for buy something, if I go into a store to buy something, I go somewhere to ask for a service, I get immediate responses and attention from people. I think I have that air of sort of authority about me.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And why do you think that is, though?
Well, I think I'm just sort of... I think, your voice can sometimes help. It has that manner of authority about it. Specific. I know exactly what I want in life, and people understand that the minute they see me, and all this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
You really believe all this nonsense, don't you? I mean, this is not actually you being silly. This is you actually telling us what you believe.
Well, haven't you got an image of yourself?
Not particularly, no. I don't really give
it
much
must have.
thought.
Well, if you haven't, you're a fool.
Why?
Because if you haven't got an image of yourself, then you don't care about how others see you, then you're just drifting through life from one alcoholic intoxication, should we call it a bladderation burst, to another.
Yeah, but surely if you worry about what people think about you, that means you're actually quite insecure.
No, you're not insecure at all. You're actually thinking about how to make the world an easier place to live in by making things happen and hoping for a reaction from what you do. Life is action, reaction, and counter-reaction.
Is it?
Okay, that's the 3 stages of life.
Okay.
If you don't,
what about death?
If you don't, my mantra is: if you're not winning, it's because you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
Now you have to create an action in order to initiate something, in order to be able to win against the odds and against other people, to put yourself in an elevated, more superior position. So, I mean...
Yeah, but I don't see the world in the same way as you do, so I'm not interested in whether somebody's superior to me or inferior to me. It doesn't really make any difference to me. I see everybody the same. I treat everybody the same.
Well, you're a fool to do that.
Why?
Well, if you treat a waitress in a restaurant the same as you, then you should be waitressing.
Why?
And there's nothing wrong with waitresses in a restaurant. They do a great job. It's very hard work, and I'm always highly respectful to them and very generous with the tip.
Yes.
But
you look down on them, though.
No, I don't look down on them, but they have a specific role in life, and that is to transport food, which is put over there by the chef on white plates, to your table, and to take the dirty plates away when you finish. That's their role in life, and it's a valuable role for people like me who go to restaurants.
Yeah, but why does it matter to you whether you're more important than they are?
Because if there weren't more important people in the world, we'd all still be living in caves. I keep trying to tell you this.
Yeah, I don't think that's true either.
Without a sense of ambition and a desire to elevate yourself, we would all still be living in trees and caves.
I don't think that's true.
No, we would.
I think it's quite a curious way to look at the world.
You don't understand anything about anthropology.
No, I don't.
And anthropology is actually the essence of existence.
Is it?
Much more important than archaeology, because archaeology is for inanimate objects, and anthropology is for live, living objects.
But isn't
called
archaeology
people.
quite a good sort of register of how civilised a particular society is?
Or uncivilised.
Or possibly
uncivilised, yes, it may well be. But it's a secondary issue. Everything's a secondary issue to the state of being of the individual Homo sapien, which is me.
OK.
You see
You're an individual Homo sapien.
Yeah,
How do we get onto this anyway?
Yeah, I don't know why you asked me. But I did mention during that I think your life drifts from one bladderation cloud to another.
I don't think that's true.
And I've
so
got
you're doing that projection thing again?
No.
I've told you about this before.
What's that?
Where you project how you live and pretend it's me.
No.
And actually it's not me that lives like that, it's you.
But I've got some great news for you.
Have you?
I've got some great news for you. Do you know what's going to open across London and other cities in the world this year? Clinics. No, this is no joke. Where after a really hard night, the sort of nights that you have when you drink a bottle of white, a bottle of red, a bottle of rosé, and then a bottle of whiskey.
Which is very, very rare.
Well, no, but you do it, don't you?
No, I did it once.
Oh, no. This is a constant pattern. I know.
No, you don't know, because you weren't there.
No, I know people who know you.
Oh,
Don't
really?
you worry about that. And what you do is you go into this clinic and you lie down and roll up your arm as if you were going to have your blood pressure taken, and you get an intravenous drip of
what? Some kind of saline solution?
Some kind of saline solution.
You get rehydrated.
Rehydrates you, makes you feel better, gets rid of your hangover in one. It's here.
Presumably you have to pay for the privilege, do you?
Oh, yes, of course you do. I think it's £15. Now, as an alternative to the hair of the dog, which is a sort of response you normally have to a massive bladderation...
You're just making this up as you go
bladderation
along,
cloud. As an alternative to the hair of the dog and a shortcut to detoxing, there is a dedicated following... that the way to get rid of debilitation, as they call it, we call it bladderation, right, by injecting a solution into your arm.
So they put it straight into your bloodstream? Then?
Straight into your bloodstream, yeah. Let me just see what's going on here.
Because the problem that people have when they suffer from a hangover, right, is a lack of oxygen in the blood, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So what do you need to do to fix that?
Well, I'm just working it out here. Dedicated following among the cash-rich, time-poor, that could be you because you have a lot of responsibilities, running your children to school and all that kind of stuff, from the hard-partying Instagram generation to high-flying city executives. Now the quest for wellness has been made easier with the launch of a walk-in drip and chill bar. It's a drip and chill bar. They don't call them clinics, call them bars, where they can order from a menu of bespoke vitamin drips that promise to boost anything from mood to libido. So you actually pick which one you want, you know. That's amazing. This is amazing.
Well, I'm not sure it's going to be that well served, though, is it? I mean, how safe is it going to be?
Yeah, celebrities have started raving about the benefits of having nutrients fed directly into their bloodstream by bypassing the need for strict attention to diet and hydration. Apparently, this has already been practiced by Rihanna, Rita Ora and Cara Delevingne. And they're amongst...
Is that the model, Cara Delevingne?
Yeah, that's a guy. That's a girl, sorry, yeah. And they're amongst those who have posted pictures of themselves on Twitter and Instagram being tube-fed concoctions they believe to be beautifying. Everyone from Simon Cowell, Madonna to Michelle Rodriguez and Gwyneth Paltrow is embracing the trend. They're called drip bars, and there's one called Revive.
Is there one here in London, then?
Well, the Revive is widespread in LA and New York and is coming to London. And it provides clients with massage chairs, flat-screen TVs and energy drinks as therapeutic levels of nutrients are delivered into their arm direct.
Well, I can imagine you might like to go there if they were delivering Pinot into your arm, but it doesn't sound like something I would do, to be honest.
Yeah, there's one in London.
It's the time, by the way.
Hang on, don't worry about this. This is important. Drop into one of E.F. Medispar's drip and chill bars in London during your lunch hour, and you can get hooked up via a needle and cannula. What's a cannula?
I've no idea.
I don't know. And cannula to find out what the fuss is all about. That's absolutely amazing.
Sounds ridiculous. Amazing. It's another mad idea. We've got Porky Vision coming up very shortly, so get ready to hear the siren alert in case he's going to give anything away. This is Talk Sport. Opportunities to play football songs actually on this show, but there's a reason why we're playing the Spurs anthem, which is making our executive producer very happy, being a Spurs fan, of course. There's a story in the Star this morning where apparently the Queen went off on a trip yesterday and arrived in a private jet in Germany, and there was THFC on the wing of the private jet that she was flying in.
Right.
And so immediately, of course, all Spurs fans who thought this was a great thing took to social media, took to Twitter, took to Facebook to say, oh, look, the Queen is obviously a Spurs fan because she's flying in a jet with THFC on it.
Well, that's a ridiculous assumption, isn't it?
Well, I suppose you might say that she's probably not a supporter of any particular football team, but it turns out that the jet itself used to be owned by Daniel Levy. Of course, the man who makes all the decisions at White Hart Lane.
Well, he actually owned it?
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
I didn't know he was that wealthy, Mr. Levy.
It used to belong to him, according to this story.
I thought Mr. Levy was a hired hand at Tottenham Hotspur.
Well, I mean, he's quite a well-paid hired hand, I suppose.
Is he? Yeah. Okay. He may have his independent wealth. I may be wrong, and if I am, I apologise to Mr. Levy for doubting his ability to raise funds in order to have his private plane. But the only thing you could say about the Queen is, of course, she's been to more cup finals than you have.
Probably true, yeah.
In fact, she's probably been to more cup finals than, like...
Anybody
half of the population. Not that I... No, I've been to 23 cup finals.
23 FA Cup finals, or is that cup finals altogether?
No, 23 FA Cup finals. Yes, I have. Yeah.
And that's not just because of Everton, presumably. They haven't been to that many, have they?
Everton, I've been to... How many have I been to? I've seen Everton in the cup final in 66. Yeah. I didn't go in 68 when we played West Brom. Dad couldn't get tickets. We got him in 66. And then I went... I didn't go in... next time I was 84, because I was in America. We beat Watford. That was the Steve Sherwood situation.
Oh, yes.
With Andy Gray.
Yeah.
Then I went in 85 and 86, and I went in 89, and I went in 95, and I went in 09.
Right. So that's quite a lot, isn't it?
But I've been into most other cup finals in between all those dates.
But the Queen doesn't go to the FA Cup final now, does she? Isn't she I'm not sure now by Prince William, who seems to go to all of
Prince Charles or Prince William, something like that. But she did go to an awful lot when she was younger, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty safe to say that she's not, in fact, a Spurs fan. But quite a funny little story. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
The plane, by the way, just in case you're an expert in these things, is a Embraer Legacy 600.
Yeah. But by the way, it's interesting alone that she's flying in a private plane because I saw a report the other day about the massive amount of transport facilities the royal family have.
Yeah.
I mean, you know...
Well, it was the royal flight, wasn't there?
There still is a royal flight, and I think they're those de Havilland planes, you know, that fly in and out of City Airport and all that kind of stuff.
But they're kind of assigned to the RAF, though, aren't they?
I suppose they must be. Yeah, I suppose they must be.
They're part of the defence budget.
Yeah, they must be. Yeah, but on you know, when the Royal Yacht went, everybody said, "Oh, it's a disaster" and all that. But I mean, they've got a fleet of 100 cars. You know, they've still got the Royal Train, I think, haven't they?
I'm not sure if they have actually.
I think they've still got the Royal Train. By the way, that was the interesting one, wasn't it? The Royal Train story at in the Sunday Mirror.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember that one?
No, I don't.
It's so spectacular. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Exactly what happened was this, that the Sunday Mirror broke a story that Prince Charles was on the Royal Train, which was in a siding somewhere in Gloucestershire. It was before he got...
Oh, this was before he was met up with Diana, right?
No, it was after he met up with Diana. This is the very point. He was engaged to Diana to get married, and they got a picture of the train and, you know, shadowy figures behind the windows and all that kind of stuff. And they splashed it in good faith, saying it was Charles and Diana's love nest, which was a bit of a scandal because, of course, the Archbishop of Canterbury and people like that perhaps thought that they shouldn't be consummating the relationship before getting married, you know. And so... And so there was a huge row about it, you know, intrusion of privacy and all that. And they said, well, it was on a public railway track and all this kind of stuff, you know. But, of course, the suspicion ever since has been... It wasn't actually Diana who was on the train with.
It was another woman.
It was Camilla.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was the first sign that Prince Charles had no intention of giving up his mistress and all that. Yeah. But it caused a huge row in those days, saying, you know, how... and, of course, the reason it caused a huge row was because if it wasn't Diana, then Charles had to answer to Diana, what were you doing on the train, darling, and who was on the train with you?
Right.
So that was a bit of a problem.
But presumably he had to say, well, actually, that wasn't me on the train. It's all rubbish.
Exactly.
Well, because when they got married, nobody had any clue that he still had this thing with Camilla. Nobody thought it was anything but a fairy tale situation.
Absolutely right. We were all taken in. I did the first tour that she ever did in North Wales.
Did you?
And do you know what became obvious over the course of the day? that Charles, who had been, bowed to and feted all his life, he had lackeys on their knees in front of him and all that kind of stuff. Throughout the course of the days, it went on. When the crowds only wanted to sing their praises to Diana and see Diana and rush after Diana and take pictures of Diana, and he was literally killed in the rush as people rushed past him to get to Diana, It became very clear to Charles by the end of the first day that they went on their first tour after getting married that he was no longer the popular royal he had been before he got married when he was the action man prince, and that Diana was now not only the favourite in the royal family, but she was going to become one of the most famous women in the world.
But front and centre, which I guess for him was not a very pleasant place to be, was it?
He could never accept it. He could never accept it after that, Never accept it.
Yeah, but that's the other thing as well. When at that point, people still thought he was going to become king. I don't think he'll ever become king, do you? I don't think they will ever give it to him. They're going to pass him over completely.
No, he will become king. He'll have to. Otherwise, the whole chain of royal succession, which has been going on for centuries, would end.
Yeah.
It would end. Because then you say, oh, well, who should we pick the king next? What about William's son? Should you give him a go or something like that? No, it will happen. But he'll be a very old king.
Well, he will.
Because if the Queen lives as long as her mother, she's still got another 20 years to go, hasn't she?
Exactly, yeah.
Or about that, about 18.
I presume there'd be some pressure for her to step aside if she gets to sort of 90-odd.
No, but she never will. She said, she never will because it's duty. She was born to be queen, and she will be queen as long as she lives on this earth. Of that, I am absolutely certain. What they're going to have to do is just accept the fact that because we're all living so much longer, you'll never get a boy king again. Well,
well, I don't think you want a boy king, do you?
Well, a youthful king. You'll never have a youthful king again. Kings in future will be like the Lord Chief Justice, very, very old when they get the hands on the throne, or the Queen gets a hand on the throne.
Do you think there'll ever be a point at which there will be no more monarchy in this country?
No. Why? It's the monarchy.
Well, because there's quite a large percentage of people who live in this country who don't think that they should be given the kind of money they're given, that they shouldn't really do the jobs.
But they're all mad. They're all mad.
Well, no, they've just got a different view to you.
The monarchy is the cement which holds our whole constitution and democracy together. At the moment in New Zealand, there is a big debate about whether or not to remove the Union Jack from the New Zealand flag.
Yeah.
So they're wavering on the monarchy and all this kind of stuff.
Which they've done in Australia before, but then they always vote to keep it, don't
Well, of course they do, because at the end of the day, they realise to be part of such a worldwide influential institution as the British monarchy is a good thing, not a bad thing. Makes them a better nation.
I just think people will change their views over time, and there will be, perhaps not in your lifetime, but certainly at some point, they'll be done away with.
They may. Listen, I've got a story to tell you, which I came across, and it's a brilliant story. Remember the legendary story about the guy at Decca who
turned down the Beatles?
Yeah. I think his quote was, "No. Guitar bands have had their day, and
something like that. Yeah,
you won't notice it anymore." What about the guy who turned down the opportunity to buy 50% of? Now, which company was it? It was.
It wasn't Levi's or Apple or one of those.
No, it was as big as Apple. I'm trying to. Yeah. So this is this guy's account, right? In 1994, I was working in marketing in London Records, a frothy pop label part owned by the Polygram Group.
I remember London Records, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah? Okay, right, okay. Now, those companies are now both long gone. They're swallowed up by Warner Brothers, okay? That summer, two American guys came into our office to pitch us a project. Rather than unfurling some band or singer, they wanted to talk about technology, specifically the internet, and what it would mean to our business in the future. They were looking for an investment of around $50,000. Okay?
50,000?
50,000, yeah. They talked about how in the future kids would buy music on their computers and that they would be able to do it anywhere on the planet, on the train, in the street, or even in a bar. So I said to these guys, where will the wires go? Where will you plug it in? And they said there won't be any wires. So I said, well, where will the CD come out of?
Because they were still manufacturing CDs.
Yeah. He said, does it come out of your computer? And the guy said, there won't be any CDs. So I said, but what about the artwork? What about the record cover? Will your computer print off the artwork? No, you don't understand. There won't be any CDs or artwork or anything. People will just want to hear the music. They don't care about all this other stuff, the packaging. They just want the music. We fell about laughing in the office. Needless to say, we sent these madmen packing with a hellish boot ringing on their backside, metaphorically speaking. Later on, we found out that the company was setting up an organisation called Yahoo.
Oh, yeah.
Later still, over redundancy drinks, when our company went into liquidation, we figured that if we'd invested the 50 grand they were looking for in Yahoo stock in 1994, rather than in making, say, the second menswear album that we did, we would all have been richer than Croesus by now by a figure of several $1 billion.
Incredible.
That's incredible.
What year was that? 94?
94.
Yeah.
This guy says, this guy's name is Stephen Witt. My point is that back in 1994, when girls like boys who like girls who like boys, that's the Andy Williams song, isn't it?
Hey?
And the girls like the boys, the Andy Williams song.
No, that's the Blur song that we played the other night.
Oh, is it? Oh, girls who like boys who like girls who like boys. Oh, yeah. Right, OK.
I think the Andy Williams song's a bit older and different.
Yeah, OK. And we all did The White Line. That must be cocaine, I assume. No one in the record industry had any idea what was coming down the pipe to destroy them. Stephen Witt's brilliant book tells you exactly how the perfect storm that forever changed the way we consume music took shape. Isn't that amazing?
Well, it's the same as the newspaper business, isn't it? People told you that you were going to get most of your news now online. You were going to have an iPad that was going to show you everything that was in a paper and was able to store every newspaper that you'd ever seen. Well, they would go, no, that's ridiculous.
When we got our first computers at the Express, and, you know, in this fantastic, sparkling new newsroom with all these computers and all that, a guy came over to me and I said, look, what has happened to so-and-so? I asked you about 2 hours ago. Why haven't you given me an answer? And this is a reporter. He said, oh, it's all right, Mike, I sent you an email. I said, an email? I said, I don't read emails, OK? I don't want an email. I want you to communicate with me and tell me what's going on. Don't send me any emails,
and
right?
that was the beginning of your not really understanding new technology.
Well, it was, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree. But to this day, I still prefer people to ring me up or tell me rather than send me an email.
You read them now, though, don't you?
Yeah, of course I do.
Excellent. Coming up next, it's time for Porky Vision. That music can only mean one thing, is that time of the week when we have Mr. Parry look back at all the great TV shows that he's been watching over the last 7 days and find out which ones he likes, which ones he doesn't like, and sometimes a little bit of a bonus on something that you should have watched many, many years ago. What you got for us this week, Mr. Parry?
Well, I haven't had time to watch a lot of telly this week.
Have you not?
I've been busy, as you know. As you know, we had lots to do, haven't we? Because we're getting it
has been very busy, yeah.
Getting the world tour sorted, and we're up to Salford on Saturday, and then we've got to go over to Geordieland, which you're looking forward to very much.
Yes.
And we are negotiating with people in Scotland, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
So, you know, quite busy. However, I do
you
have
must
to
have
make
been able
time
to squeeze some
Well, I
television
did. I watched that thing on Sunday night in which my namesake appears. Mike
Yes,
Parry.
I got a lot of tweets, actually, on the weekend about the villain of this new show.
Black
which I think is
Walk.
called Black Walk or Black Work, was it?
Black Work, is it?
Yeah, and Michael Parry was apparently the criminal.
Yeah, of criminal intent and all that. It's about teachers, though, isn't it?
I don't know what it is.
I think it's about teachers. Yeah, and it's very good. Got some very good reviews. So I'm going to take that in next week. Okay, let's just warn people what next week's...
It might be quite weird to watch a show where somebody with exactly the same name as you is actually in it.
No, I totally agree. But that's just to let people... That's a preview of next week's Porky Vision.
Okay. Right.
So I'd let you know about that. Now... One programme which is increasingly irritating me is Coronation Street, okay? But, I mean, I've talked about that before. So
we have talked a lot about Coronation Street.
I don't know.
And also, we got into a bit of trouble last week, didn't we, about that, and what the plot was going to be coming out with.
I don't know. People take things such the wrong way. But what I was going to say was, because I'm an avid soap watcher, right? Although I haven't watched Emmerdale for about 2.5 years because I haven't had time. But I noticed that a lot of these sort of soap actors just go around in circles.
Yeah.
So, for instance, there's a lady who used to be a very beautiful lady in Emmerdale for many years.
Right.
I can't remember who she played, but she's now pitched up in Coronation Street. Playing a 50-year-old girlfriend of Nick Tilsley.
Do you think there's a kind of pecking order as to
her name's Kathy, I think.
Is it?
Is it? Yeah. No. Wait a minute.
What, a real name?
No, I'm just trying to... No, Erica. Sorry, her name in the show is Erica.
In Coronation Street.
Yeah, but in Emmerdale, she was a leading character for years.
Yeah.
I think she was one of the Dingles family.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Get killed off.
Well, I'm not sure, really, because I haven't seen Emmerdale for the last 2.5 years. But anyway, the other thing is...
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, do you think there's a pecking order? So, for example, you're in Emmerdale as a main character.
Yes.
But that would be the equivalent of maybe going to Coronation Street as maybe a minor character, and it's still not really a step down.
Well, you probably remember I did a video about a year ago with Cindy Beale from EastEnders.
I don't remember.
Yes. After she turned up in Coronation Street as the new landlady of the Rovers.
Of the Rovers return.
But she's gone now.
Has she?
She's gone.
Why did you do a video with her then?
Because I did a promotional thing for my very good actress friend Jenny Seagrove.
Oh, yes, for your charitable
thing.
efforts. Okay.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Now, the latest in this is a guy who I noticed was a cop in... what's the cop series called?
Which one?
The one that doesn't show anymore, but did for years. No, the one that was on at 7 o'clock every night.
I don't know.
You know, it's about...
Heartbeat?
No.
Bill?
The Bill, that's right, yeah. This guy was in The Bill, and he's now turned up as the new boyfriend of one of my past paramours, Liz McDonald, in Coronation Street.
Right.
Who's discovered that Tony, her boyfriend, is a cheating, lying, thieving scumbag who was trying to buy the pub from underneath her, and also having an affair with, believe it or not, Tracy.
Oh dear.
So, but anyway,
I think we should leave Tracy out of this.
I'd leave all that alone. Now, the other program I was going to tell you about was I switched on the other night and happened to see Eating Together.
Eating Together,
yeah.
And what's that about?
It's about eating, and it's.
Is it a documentary?
Yes. It takes a typical English dish and shows you how it's interpreted around the world. So, and what caught my attention was that they were looking at the Lancashire hot pot. Now, I love Lancashire hot pot, okay?
Yeah.
My mum used to make it when we were little, you know, and she'd make this fantastic hot pot with fried potatoes.
I've never heard you talk about making it before, though. You don't make it yourself.
No, of course I don't make it
Why
myself.
not?
It takes hours.
Does it?
Yeah, you have to cut up, like, you know, steak and all that, and then braise it and grill it and all that, and then you put it in the hot pot, and then you put all the carrots in and all that. And it's a dish which is called scouse on Merseyside. You know, it's the same thing, without the sort of crispy potatoes on the top, if you see what I mean. So I was very interested in this, and I looked at it for about 5 minutes, and I found out that the Iranian version of hot pot, is it's called lumpy duck.
Lumpy duck?
Yeah, lumpy duck.
Is that in the local lingo?
Yeah.
Lumpy duck?
Yeah. I'm not sure what the language they speak in Iran. Probably Iranian.
Persian, I would imagine.
No, I meant Arabic. Probably Arabic, because there's a United Arabic language for a lot of the those Middle East countries. You know what I mean? Bit like sort of Latin was across the Roman Empire, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
You know, so I thought that was quite interesting. And
so, how's it different though? Presumably, they don't use the same ingredients.
Well, they use duck. That's the whole point. And they marinate the duck first. Okay. Also, in Brazil, it's called feijoada.
Feijoada. And what do they cook it with?
Well, you know our mate who you speak to regularly from Brazil, our correspondent Tim Vickery.
Yeah.
I think next time Tim comes on, because I think he's in the unusual on Tuesday morning.
He is indeed, yeah.
You should ask him about feijoada, okay?
I will.
Which is
Brazilian version of Lancashire hot pot.
It is a Brazilian
So is this
version.
like a chef that presents this show? Is it somebody who we know?
Yeah,
is it
it's a guy.
A celebrity chef or something?
Yeah, it's a bloke called... Hang on, I wrote his name down somewhere. Yes, a fellow called Nigel Slater.
Oh, I know Nigel Slater.
Do you?
Yeah.
Who's Nigel Slater?
Yeah, well, he's a chef. He's written various cookbooks.
Oh, does he? Oh, well, there you go. Then
he's quite an interesting guy.
So that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Okay. And also in Bangladesh, it is called korma.
Is it?
As in curry korma?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, korma for a lot of sort of curry type dishes just means something baked in the oven, basically.
Yes.
It's not the sort of korma that you would know if you went to an Indian restaurant.
Yeah, but that was my favourite programme of the week.
Was it?
And that's the one that I would recommend anybody to have a look at.
And it's a series, I guess, so there'll be plenty of versions of it.
Yeah, but not the hot pot one. That's come and gone.
Okay.
But haven't they got all these look back channels and all that kind of stuff?
They have.
Yeah.
Where you can actually watch something.
Now,
that's already gone out.
something else I saw was who's Kevin McLeod?
I don't know.
Is he a travel writer?
Who is Kevin McLeod? I don't know.
I'm not sure. But anyway, he a programme I saw a bit of was called Escape to the Wild.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's about living in a rainforest.
Where?
I'm not sure, actually. Well, no.
This is possibly worse than last week's Porky Vision.
No. This guy...
you know when you do a TV review?
Yes.
And, I mean, we've all known some TV reviewers in our time.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you would normally take a few notes.
Yeah, I do.
A few
I've written them down, but I've written them in
details.
shorthand, and I'm not as good as interpreting my shorthand these days as I used to be.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Let me just find out this one. I'll read this through. This guy has gone out into the rainforest and cleared a bit of it, and he's planted 800 cacao trees. Okay?
Cacao?
Yeah. Cacao trees.
Okay.
Cacao. You know what a cacao tree is?
Yeah, I believe so.
What's a cacao tree?
It's not a coca tree, is it?
Oh, yeah. I tell you what he's doing. He's going to make his own chocolate bars.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
So he gave up
Like
city
creme
life
de
in...
cacao is what
he gave up his city life in London and went there to...
went where?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out, because I've written it down.
Presumably somewhere in South America.
Let me have a look.
Or possibly somewhere in Asia.
Where's it gone here?
Have you got like a map or something you're looking at?
Oh, here we go. Belize.
Belize?
Oh,
okay.
Belize.
Just
so
off the coast of
Central America.
Of Central America.
Incidentally, talking about Belize, it's very near French Honduras.
Yes.
Where they launched a satellite the other day.
Did they?
Yeah, and in fact, I was there for a satellite launch in French Honduras.
That was when you went on Concord, wasn't it?
That's exactly right, I did, yeah. And it's a pretty leafy place. You know, there's lots of leaves around.
Well, it's a jungle, isn't it?
It's a jungle, absolutely right. That's what I mean, yeah. But I was always amazed that they put the satellite there, because I was always frightened that if the satellite blew up, set fire to the jungle. There's a lot of jungle, you know what I mean?
Well, that's true.
And it's very hot. I think that's probably why they decided that launch should be in the rainy season, the monsoon season, because then if the...
Everything would be wet.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if the rocket exploded and set fire to the jungle, it wouldn't set fire to the jungle during the monsoon season because the jungle was wet.
Right.
But the problem was the monsoon was so wild and so heavy, they had to postpone the launch of the missile with the satellite in it because the monsoon had wrecked the launch pad.
Goodness
so
me.
So it was all a bit counterproductive, really.
Yeah, it must have been.
That wasn't in this programme, by the way, from Belize, because Belize is next door to French Honduras. But, I mean...
Luckily, it didn't catch fire.
No, but the reason I told you that story is because I was giving you the flavour of the sort of place that this guy moved to start his cocoa farm where he wants to make chocolate.
Right.
Can't think of anything more stupid, in my view, to swap the civilised existence of a London suburb for a blinking jungle in Central America growing cocoa trees. Guy must be off his rocker.
I'm glad you've explained why you told me that story, because I've absolutely no idea why you did.
Yeah.
Well, that was Porky Vision.
Okay.
Definitely worse than last week's, I would say. But we'll take a view on Twitter, I'm sure.
Not at all.
At the two mics. Coming up, we've got loads more going on. This is Talk Sport.
Madness, they call it madness.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time with the two mics. There will be, of course, a podcast coming out about 4 or 5 hours from now.
Is that right?
Also, tomorrow night, it's the Porky quiz on Elvis Presley.
Yes.
The team of Inquisitors, the question quiz masters are putting it all together. I haven't seen the questions yet.
I'll be in great shape for that,
we'll
by the
see
way.
how you get on with that. Adrian has tweeted at the two mics, possibly the worst TV review ever.
What?
When's Porky on Jeremy Vine discussing the future of television output? I think he's making a joke about your expertise in the area.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah. So, I wasn't very impressed with it.
I don't think he was, no.
It says here, Kevin McLeod is from Grand Designs.
Yes.
Who's Kevin McLeod?
He's the guy that you were talking about in the rainforest.
Oh, is that right? Is that what he went out to do? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And it says here, no more Tracy, Mike, move on. Well, I'm not obsessed with Tracy, honestly. It's just that she's part of the plot in Coronation Street, you know. And one here says, great show, lads. The best of the two mics, fantastic. That came just after the TV review. So,
well, there you go.
You know, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Some people sort of quite like the TV review, I have to say. But, I mean, there are those who, if they were to listen to it in order to get too many recommendations, might probably be barking up the wrong tree.
Absolutely.
Especially since you're so busy now with all these other projects that you're doing. You've got a lot of time to watch TV.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. Now, listen, I want to talk to you about your inability to try and conquer your smoking, your habit of 2 packets a day, by getting onto the vaping.
Well, first of all, it's not 2 packets a day.
Why don't you get onto the vaping?
I don't fancy the look of it. I don't like the look of it at all.
But I mean,
see an awful lot of people...
If it helps you give up smoking, you've got another...
Well, I'm not sure it does.
You've got another...
Do you want me to answer the question?
15 years of responsibility to young boys.
Many more years of responsibility,
So you need to try and preserve your life a bit more carefully than you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm not the one who's got a heart problem, first of all, as I always point out to you, and I'm not the one who was 36 hours from death, okay?
I survived all that.
Yeah, well, you
came back.
Yeah, you have, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily any more than 36
hours. I'm a medical miracle.
Yeah, but you could be 36 hours away from death still at any given point.
Anybody could.
Well, that's my point.
No,
but when I see people vaping, as it's now called, and holding these very sort of strange shaped things in their mouth and walking down the street, doing it in cars, doing it sometimes inside buildings, it doesn't look to me as if that's stopping them from smoking. All it's doing is making them smoke in a different way. It doesn't seem as if
but
there's
it's
any
not
evidence.
as harmful, is it?
Well, I don't know whether it is.
No, it's supposed to not... I mean, that's the whole idea. Listen, the reason I asked you that is because I found a document published by the man who invented the vape, who says it's gone completely sort of full circle.
Right.
And that is that the people who were campaigning to have cigarettes banned are now campaigning to have the vape banned. Because they say that instead of it stopping people smoking, it starts people smoking because they experiment with the vape first and then go on to cigarettes.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because originally it was kind of given all sorts of access to TV. I mean, you can still see adverts for it. You can still, see sponsors, names going all over things which they shouldn't otherwise do. Because everyone thought, oh, this is great because it will kill off the cigarette market. But it hasn't.
Right. No, it hasn't at all. Now, the guy who invented it is a guy called Hon Lik.
Hon Lik?
Yeah, honestly, that's his name. Hon Lik, H-O-N, new word, Lik, L-I-K.
Okay.
Now, he worked at the Liaoning Provincial Institute of Traditional Chinese Medicine in Liaoning, and he was smoking 2 packs a day. And he said, I had to find a way to stop it. I tried cold turkey several times, but failed. In 2001, I tried nicotine patch, but it gave me nightmares when I forgot to take it off at night, and it failed to replicate the initial rush of a cigarette. So being a chemist with a penchant for electronics, he went into the laboratory, set about emulating the effect of smoke without a fire. The lab where he worked had a good supply of pure nicotine used for calibrating other product. He needed to find a way to vaporise it instantly and began with ultrasound, later turning to a heating element. First machine was a monster. By 2003, he'd filed a patent on smaller, more practical models. I already knew it'd be a revolutionary product, he told me with a smile. This is an interview he gave last week.
Right.
Some in China have called it the 5th invention after navigation, gunpowder, printing and paper. That's not
crazy.
Bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, but it's not, is it?
The Chinese say it's the 5th most important invention after navigation, gunpowder, printing and paper. How about that?
I don't think it could be, because presumably if you were going to count important inventions, you would have to also include actual smoking originally. I mean, if you're going to say vaping is a great invention, well, surely smoking was an invention before that.
No, smoking is something that harms you. Vaping is something that prevents harm.
Well, you don't really know that, though, do you? Because the point about vaping is that nobody's actually studied people who have done it for long enough to know how much harm it might or might otherwise do you.
Here you go. Modest interest in China initially, but then European and American businesses started arriving, buying up patents, taking them back to Europe and North America. That was 8 years ago. Vaping revolution took off. It's now worldwide. Today, more than 1 million smokers in Britain have quit using e-cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
Another 1 million have cut down. But the frustration now for Mr. Hon Lik is that although the number's growing all the time, local authorities are now getting involved, even though he says there is evidence of a lot less lung cancer, a lot less heart disease, a lot less broken relationships because people complain their partners have smelly clothing and hair, and fire risks have been cut by 100% in areas where people vape instead of smoking. They don't fall asleep with a lit cigarette in their hand, OK?
Well, that's all good, but, I mean, the key word there is a lot less of a risk as opposed to no risk at all. So that's what I'm saying. They don't yet know whether it might be slightly less harmful than smoking cigarettes, but it might not necessarily still be completely unharmful.
Now, the frustration for Mr. Hon Lik is that he says it should be a worldwide revolution, but the Welsh Government were the first to announce that they're trying to ban the use of e-cigarettes in enclosed public spaces, right? The British Medical Association remains implacably disapproving, and the World Health Organization are censorious. And the European Commission have set out on banning refillable versions of the vape. Southern Rail in the United Kingdom is banning vaping on its trains from next month.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I didn't even know you were allowed to do it on the train, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I've seen people doing it on train, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I wasn't sure if it was actually, it was legal to do so.
And Starbucks, Cafe Nero, All Bar One and KFC now also have bans. So what is the point of him having invented this great thing which stops people from doing their lungs in with smoking if now people are banning it all over the place?
Well, because perhaps they're now listening to, the science, or they're watching what's been happening and they're working out that it's not necessarily completely completely safe, so they don't want to encourage people to do it. Also, of course, a bit like the biking conversation we were having earlier, there are those people who don't actually think that others should be allowed to smoke anything at all. Yeah. And sometimes, when you see some of this vaping stuff that goes on, there's an awful big cloud of smoke that comes out of it. I mean, you wouldn't want to sit next to somebody who was doing that on a train.
Yeah, but the cloud that comes out is only...
well, it's vapour.
I was going to say...
But it can be kind of flavoured in some way. It can be, sort of fruit-flavoured or with some other essence. essence.
But when you say it's vapour, it's like steam, isn't it? It's just steam.
It is, but if you've ever watched somebody doing it, sometimes a lot of the steam comes out, and you wouldn't want to get it all over you if you were just sitting next to somebody. So I would be all for. I mean, I don't see if you can not smoke somewhere that you should be able to do that.
But anyway, just to go on, the opponents of the vaping fear that it's a gateway into smoking.
Right.
But he says, Mr. Honlick says, all the evidence suggests it's a floodgate out.
Yes.
Now, what he says is there is hope on the horizon because the anti-smoking group ASH in this country, the British Heart Foundation, the Royal College of Physicians, and even Cancer Research UK have now come out against the Welsh ban and effectively are in favour of letting vaping drive out smoking. He says the penny is now dropping. I can save the world.
I don't think people have completely discovered any kind of level of agreement on this because, like you say, I mean, some of those organisations are saying, you should let it go ahead because it's going to stop people from smoking. But yet the others are saying, well, it's going to encourage kids to smoke more and all that kind of thing. I mean, there's shops opening up all over the country as well, selling all sorts of different kind of forms of vaping cigarettes and vaping, kits and all that kind of thing.
It seems to me...
It looks a bit odd to me.
It seems to me there are a legion of people in modern life, right, and they're just called the banners.
Yes, they do like banning things.
So they got their way banning fox hunting, and that has now led, apparently, I mean, I don't know everything about fox hunting, but now led apparently to horrendous cruelty for old foxes, because old foxes used to get caught by dogs and all that kind of stuff, and that was fox hunting. Now they literally just perish and die very, very slowly and get attacked by other animals and all this kind of stuff, It's also...
well, it's presumably also led to a whole load of urban foxes roaming the streets of London and all the other cities in the world.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think the urban fox is basically there because that was their patch before we built houses there, if you see what I mean. Right. And I think they're still there. But foxes, I think if fox hunting was resumed full-time now without a ban, there wouldn't be many foxes to hunt. Most foxes now live in suburbs. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. You don't see them in the countryside. You see them in town.
You do, absolutely. By the way, talking about that, did you see the great story this week about a woman who found a dormouse hiding in her car?
No. And I did see the great one about the cat that was stowed away on the plane.
So I saw that.
Was pretty remarkable.
Now, this woman's name, Sue Collard, found a dormouse hiding in her car. So she said, I've got to return it to its natural stowaway. But when she got an expert to look at it, and it lived in her Vauxhall Mariva car, right?
Whereabouts in the car did it live?
Well, it ran around in the car.
Oh, okay.
She couldn't ever sort of find it. She's a university lecturer, so she's not an ignorant woman. She's a very bright woman.
Yeah.
So when she got an expert in to identify it, she said, that's from Normandy. Have you been to France lately? She said, yeah, I was in France last week.
How did she know it was from Normandy?
Because the expert said that dormouse...
How can you tell whether a dormouse is from Normandy?
Because it was a Normandy dormouse. It's the only place where this particular brand of dormouse lived. Yeah.
I didn't know they had different French brands of dormouse.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it was a species of dormouse which only exists in France.
How strange.
So she spent £280 on petrol on the journey back to Normandy. She said, as I was driving there, for some weird reason, it came out of its hidey hole and was sitting on the front seat, sniffing at a box of pears.
So did it jump on at Calais or something?
She doesn't know.
That seems to be the thing to do.
She said it was very hungry, it's a bit of a shock, but straight away I knew it was from Normandy. So she lives in Hove in East Sussex. Yeah. She trapped the dormouse.
Is she going to take it back to Normandy?
Which is common to France. Well, hang on, I'm just telling you. She then decided, I've got to take it back home. Its family might be waiting for it. She returned to her holiday home in the hamlet of Saint-Gervais-de-Sabion. Yeah.
Very nicely said.
Yeah, thank you. In the hope that the dormouse, which she named Larry, would escape back into its natural habitat. But it did not work. And Dr. Collard, who's had home in France for 25 years, was forced to return to Hove.
What do you mean it didn't work?
The dormouse wouldn't get out of the car.
Well, why don't she just chuck it out of the car?
She couldn't find it. It runs into little... Yeah, it runs into... excuse me, little, cubby holes in the car. Yeah. But eventually she thought, well, I've got to trap it, so she got a humane trap to trap it in a box. She had a vet check...
Seems like an awful lot of trouble for a mouse.
Well, I think this is such a great, compassionate story. She had a vet check out that Larry was well enough for another journey, and then took it to France and released it into its habitat 5 days later.
What a palaver for a dormouse.
Yeah, she said, most people thought I was crazy. She said, but what can you do? I wasn't going to poison it. This morning, I found it in the trap. and took it back. It's a huge relief. Didn't realise the huge extent it was getting at me. It was very emotional to see it finally escape. It was brilliant. I'm just now glad it's back where it belongs. Hope it finds its family.
Well, I hope what
story.
Might have happened hasn't happened, which is that another mouse would have got in the car to replace that mouse, and then you just have to keep doing that for the rest of her life.
Well,
driving backwards and forwards to Normandy.
You see how that's a wonderfully compassionate story. That's exactly how I feel about animals. Why would you ever want to harm an animal? You should go out of your way to try and make sure that animals feel as happy and accommodated and welcome on this earth as we do as humans.
Yeah.
Do you not agree?
Well, I do agree, but I'm
good.
amazed that you agree, because you're always telling me about all sorts of species of animals that if we killed them off, nobody would miss them.
Well, nobody would miss the white rhino, but
right.
I mean, a little
so you don't
dormouse.
mind killing that off, you don't mind killing giraffes off, I think you said
No,
before.
I didn't. What I said was, how much effort can man make to stop the white rhino being killed? I mean, if it takes £10 million to preserve the last white rhino, I think that's a waste of money.
Maybe I should take to Normandy.
Nobody's ever seen a white rhino, so it doesn't matter.
Well, people have seen them.
No, nobody's ever seen, like, a dinosaur, but we still, revere dinosaurs, so we'd still revere the white rhino, even if there weren't any white rhinos, so it doesn't really matter if the white rhino dies.
Okay.
Don't you get it?
No, you've rendered me speechless with that last statement, I'm afraid. But fortunately, we are now out of time. You'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Don't forget to do as much research as you possibly can on Elvis Presley.
Oh, don't worry, I know all about Elvis already. I won't have to do any research.
OK, well, as long as you're an expert. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics.
Look at the light! Don't forget to come back tomorrow for another sparkling, as fizzy as a bottle of champagne, podcast from the two mics. You put a homing device in the barrel of the dart, and you break into the location where the darts competition is taking place overnight, put some sort of a bug behind the darts board, you see what I mean? And then you put a homing device in the barrel of your dart, use extra thick darts, and it would actually go straight to the double top all the time.
Only you would come up with something like that.
Mud, the blood and the beer.
The mud, the blood and the beer. There's a good slogan for it.
If you love the Two Mics podcast, you'll love the live show. Weekday overnights from 1am on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM and via the TalkSport app. TalkSport, your Premier League station with exclusive commentaries every weekend.
What an absolute corker!
TalkSport.